Drowning in 300,000 yuan of medical debt, and running a failing fruit stall, I was completely ruined. Then a broken game glitch linked my mind to a virtual ranch, duplicating super crops with instant stat buffs. Now I reign as a $10 billion resort tycoon, commanding a 500-acre mountain villa and a world-renowned magical floral empire. Hit subscribe and smash that like button to witness the ultimate rags to riches empire build. But before ruling an empire, I was just a broke graduate trapped behind a decaying fruit counter. Reality can be a gentle partner if you have money, or a complete nightmare if your pockets are empty. August in Yuqing was blistering, a town where average wages sat at 3,000 while apartment prices demanded 12. "Auntie, here are your greens, come back anytime," I said, forcing my best retail smile. The moment she walked out, the fake smile dropped, and I grabbed a fly swatter to wage war on the produce flies. I slumped into the cashier chair and booted up Story of Seasons on my phone to kill time. 1 year out of college with a tourism degree, and here I was selling cabbages after 3 generations of family poverty. Cancer took my father right after my grandfather passed, leaving us with a sold family home and mountains of borrowed debt. So I turned down big corporate offers in the city to come home, nurse my sick mother, and run this shop. Balance sat at 4,500 yuan, which meant getting sick myself was basically a luxury I could not afford. Social media clowns claimed you could make millions from a tiny fruit stand, but this 30-square-meter trap was my whole life. Back in the game, I weeded and watered my 6 watermelon plots, which ripened in just over 10 hours. Just as I tapped to harvest, the phone suddenly shot out violent bursts of electricity that locked up my entire body. A robotic chime echoed in my skull announcing a special game channel, and I slapped my forehead wondering if I was hallucinating. An entire 3D ranch materialized with 6 ripe watermelon fields sprawling under a golden sun. I focused my thoughts on harvesting, and my character stepped forward, pulling up a glowing option to enter immediately. A strange suction dragged me through space, and suddenly I was standing in the dirt holding a real, heavy watermelon. A floating system panel appeared over the fruit, tagging it as a quality 1 seedless watermelon with bonus sweetness and texture. I picked a few more from the vines, and every single one displayed the exact same quality bonuses. Looking around at the windmills and wooden fences, I checked my phone and saw real-world time was flowing normally again. I checked my mental vision and saw a clear prompt to exit back to my shop, giving me instant relief. I thought exit, warped back into the shop with the melon in my arms, and sliced it open to find solid, seedless red flesh. I sliced it into wedges, wanting to test it, and noticed a dirty stray black dog loitering by the trash can outside. I tossed the piece over, and the dog pinned it down with its paws before devouring every bite without any side effects. Seeing the dog was fine, I took a bite myself and was blown away by the crisp, refreshing sweetness exploding in my mouth. In regular wholesale, you might find 1 melon this good out of 100, but here, every single one was perfection. Selling just 20 melons a day at retail would net 12,000 yuan a month in pure profit. Even better, the ranch offered an endless supply with crops that reached full maturity in just over 10 hours. The dog barked for more, so I threw it another piece and slammed the metal roller shutter shut to get to work. I grabbed a plastic crate from the shop, warped into the ranch, and hand-loaded 15 melons before hauling them back. Then I realized doing it by hand was stupid when I could just clear the remaining 5 plots instantly using mental controls. When I checked the ranch storage shed, 90 quality 1 watermelons were already stacked neatly in massive piles. I ferried load after load until a mountain of 105 watermelons filled the corner of my shop. I pulled up the mental interface, cleared the dead vines, and planted fresh seeds to start the next 10-hour countdown. Rolling the shutter back up, I set a fresh basket out on the display rack with my usual price tag of 2 yuan per gene. Since my acquisition cost was literally 0, I crossed out the price and slashed it to 1.5 to move volume fast. But an entire afternoon crawled by with almost 0 foot traffic, leaving me with only 2 melons sold. I slapped my forehead when I realized I was being an idiot trying to sell retail when I could offload them wholesale. I posted in the local vendor group claiming my relative had a batch of seedless melons at 1.5 with direct door delivery. Fruit vendors in Yuqing only had 2 miserable options: haul freight from the far logistics park or haggle with stubborn village farmers. Offering top-tier quality at matching market rates with free doorstep delivery meant nobody in their right mind would refuse. Right after I sent the message, 3 nearby shop owners from Market Street jumped into the group chat asking questions. Since no one else spoke up, I locked in an appointment for the 3 of them to come sample the fruit right away. Just then, A mental system prompt warned me that the newly planted seeds required their first round of watering. I used my mind to direct the game avatar to grab the watering can from the shed, fill it at the river, and soak every plot. A minute later, Lu Dashing, Qin Lin, and AI Cuny rolled up to the storefront on their electric scooters. "Xiao Qing, where are those melons? Let me see them," Lu Dashing called out the second he walked through the door. I pointed over to the floor pile and invited Brother Lu, Brother Chen, and Sister AI to check out the stock. They were seasoned veterans who knew produce inside out, checking the vivid stripes, fresh green stems, and hollow thumps. The melons looked incredible on the outside, but with so many shady suppliers around, they still wanted to cut one open. I knew the game, so I told them to pick any melon from the pile for a live test. Lu Dashing pointed to one, and I split it down the middle, revealing gorgeous ruby-red flesh before carving it into tasting wedges. The three vendors grabbed their slices just as that stray black dog trotted up to the open door, barking for another handout. I flipped a slice out to the sidewalk, figuring a stomach ache from gorging on melon would finally teach it some manners. With the deliciousness and sweetness buffs kicking in, their eyes lit up after 2 bites, calling it the best melon they had ever tasted. "Xiao Qing, is it really home delivery?" they asked, and I assured them every batch would be dropped straight at their doorsteps. All three jumped on board immediately, locking in 30 trial melons each while agreeing to settle payment upon delivery. Doorstep delivery was essential, because street surveillance cameras would eventually notice hundreds of melons leaving a shop that never received supply trucks. I pulled down the shutter and headed to the market parking lot to fire up my beat-up farm tricycle. I backed the truck to the storefront, loaded all the wholesale melons into the cargo bed, and locked up the shop. My first stop was Dashing Fruit Shop just down the street, where Lu Dashing was already chatting with his upstairs neighbor, Xiao Qin. Brother Lu waved his neighbor over to my truck, offering to slice open a fresh melon right on the spot. The melon weighed 11 Jin, and Lu Dashing carved a slice for Xiao Qin to sample. One bite had Xiao Qin raving about the juicy sweetness, immediately ordering 4 more melons totaling 47 Jin. Xiao Qin sent 94 yuan straight to Brother Lu via WeChat and headed off, completely thrilled with his haul. Brother Lu praised the melon quality, as I hauled 25 more out of the truck to fill out his 30 melon order. The total came to 334 Jin, netting me a 501 yuan transfer plus a formal invoice. I dropped off 30 melons at Chende's shop for 540 yuan, then unloaded another 30 for AI Cuny to collect 492. 90 melons across 3 vendors brought in 1,533 yuan, completely blowing away what my shop usually made in a week. When I pulled back up to my shop, that black dog was still sprawled out comfortably by the entrance without a hint of an upset stomach. Before the sun went down, walk-in customers bought my last 4 melons, pushing my daily net profit to 1,705 yuan. 1,500 a day, that was over 51,000 a month, an unreal income in a sleepy town like Yuqing. Right on cue, a mental system chime alerted me that wild weeds were choking the new seedlings and needed immediate clearing. I cleared the weeds with a thought, grabbed some leftover greens for dinner, locked the shutter, and rode my tricycle home through the dark. Making 1,700 daily meant I could stop stressing over vegetable pennies and dedicate the truck entirely to hauling melons. I climbed up to our cramped 3rd-floor rental and walked in to find my mother, Linfen, already cooking at the stove. "Mom, I told you to wait for me to cook," I said, but she stubbornly insisted she was still capable of making dinner. I put the groceries in the fridge and sat down, reassuring her that shop business was picking up fast. My mother sighed with guilt, blaming herself for leaving me with hundreds of thousands in debt, while other parents bought their kids homes. I told her raising me in good health was already the greatest gift, and that I would never hold our debts against them. She brought up Xiao Moqing, telling me not to resent her parents for asking for a house down payment instead of cars or dowries. She promised that once her health stabilized, she would take back the shop so we could save up for our apartment together. Moqing and I were strangers through 3 years of high school, only actually connecting when fate placed us in adjacent seats on the college train. Honestly, her parents were completely reasonable, since no family wants their daughter marrying a guy buried under hundreds of thousands in debt with no property. "Do not worry, Mom, we will get that house. Moqing is your daughter-in-law and she is not going anywhere," I said before finishing my dinner. I stepped into my bedroom, pulled open a locked desk drawer, and took out our official red marriage certificate. The names Qin Lin and Xiao Moqing sat side by side, a reminder of the incredible bravery she showed by stealing her family registry to marry me. I locked the certificate away just as a mental game chime warned me that hungry pests were swarming the newly sprouted vines. With a single thought, I had my avatar equip a bug net and sweep every last pest off the watermelon patch. 6 plots were already giving me over 100 melons, but that was barely a fraction of the ranch territory. The game had 100 total plots, though most were grayed out by level locks or choked with rocks, weeds, and tree stumps. Continuous planting gained experience to level up, which unlocked more land, higher crop tiers, and advanced farm features. I used my mind to grab tools from the shed, cleared away the debris on 6 open plots, and planted new watermelon seeds. Those 6 new plots would be fully ripe by noon tomorrow, giving me another 100 melons to sell. Instead of opening more land, I grabbed my phone and started scrolling real estate sites for an isolated warehouse to rent. Pulling hundreds of melons out of thin air inside the city, or out in the open, was practically begging to get caught. I finally found an old feed warehouse from a bankrupt pig farm sitting alone on the outskirts of Yuching. In a month with no deposit and a private access road, nobody wanted it because of the remote location, which made it perfect for me. Early the next morning, I checked my mind and saw the first 6 plots overflowing with ripe watermelons ready for storage. I replanted those plots, but the 6 newer ones had sprouted buds that were already getting swarmed by weeds and bugs. I cleared the pests with a thought, scarfed down a quick breakfast, and called the landlord to meet at the warehouse. A 10-minute ride out of town brought me to the secluded property, complete with a massive concrete yard big enough for semi-trucks. Yuan for a 3-month lease cleaned out my bank account, but I signed without hesitation, knowing the money would come right back. The landlord added me on WeChat for rent transfers, then rushed off to play cards, leaving me alone with the keys. I unlocked the dusty, cobwebbed interior, hauled in empty baskets from my tricycle, and locked the heavy door from the inside. I stepped into the game, loaded 106 quality 1 watermelons into the crates, and materialized the entire haul inside the warehouse. After stacking the entire load onto my truck, I filmed a quick promo video and blasted it to the Vendor Alliance group. Lu Dashing jumped in immediately, saying his stock sold out overnight and demanding 20 more melons on the spot. Qin Lin asked for 10 and AI Qin locked in 20, proving the game melons were basically selling themselves. Seeing the veterans place repeat orders, other fruit vendors flooded the chat begging for delivery without even checking samples. I told the group I would prioritize Brother Lu first, then instructed everyone else to DM their addresses for later delivery. I rolled back onto Market Street and unloaded 20 melons at Dashing Fruit Shop for 345 yuan. Qin Lin took 10 and AI Qin took 20, adding another 885 yuan to my morning pocket. Checking my private messages, 6 small neighborhood shops had placed orders for 80 melons in total. I dropped 55 melons off at 3 distant shops by the school and South Street, collecting another 948 yuan. That single morning run brought in over 1800 yuan, and another full batch would be ready by noon. When I got back to my storefront, that scruffy black dog came tearing out of an alley across the street, bounding straight toward me. I glared at the dog and told it to get lost, but the shameless mutt just grinned, stuck out its tongue, and flopped down by the door to lick its paws. Giving up on the stray, I slumped into the cashier chair, pulled up the mental farm, and watered the morning seeds. Right around noon, a system chime announced the 6 newer plots had matured, so I quickly harvested the crop, cleared the withered vines, and dropped fresh seeds into the dirt. I gave my mom a quick call to let her know I was skipping lunch at home, then fired up the tricycle and sped back to the remote warehouse. After locking the metal door tight, I warped into the ranch and extracted 110 quality 1 watermelons into the crates. Hauling the load back to town, I dropped 30 melons across the 3 pending morning orders, pocketing another 481 yuan. In barely a single day since unlocking this game, my total haul hit over 4,000 yuan, which honestly felt like scooping free cash off the street. With my stomach growling and my wallet full, I treated myself to a luxury takeout order with 2 braised eggs and 2 whole roast chicken legs. Just as I took a bite, the black dog sat right at the doorway, staring at my lunchbox with shameless, pleading puppy dog eyes. I tried to look away and keep eating, but then the damn thing lowered its head and let out the most pitiful, heartbroken whine I had ever heard. Being too soft-hearted is a fatal flaw, so I gritted my teeth and tossed the chicken leg over. The second the meat hit its jaws, the fake misery vanished into an energetic tail wag, and I realized I had just been completely outplayed by a stray dog. After wiping out my lunch, I filmed the 80 melons sitting in the corner and blasted another promo clip to the vendor group. While waiting for buyers, I jumped back into the mental ranch with my sickle, axe, and hammer to smash through rocks and stumps across 12 new plots. My phone buzzed with a message from Lu Ershing, Brother Lu brother who ran a shop right outside number 1 middle school, asking for 50 melons. Selling iced watermelon cups with toothpicks outside a school of thousands is basically a license to print cash in August. I kept 30 melons for my own storefront and loaded 50 onto the tricycle bed for Lu Ershing. The 50 melons weighed 575 jin, putting 862 yuan in my pocket right at the school gate. Back at the shop, I opened the mental ranch and hoed all 12 cleared plots into fertile planting beds. Pulling in nearly 5,000 yuan in one day made it crystal clear that this game was my golden ticket out of poverty. With 12 newly tilled plots ready, I pulled out my remaining watermelon seeds and started planting. I barely finished 3 plots before a red system alert flashed warning me that my seed stock was empty. I slapped my forehead, realizing I had completely overlooked that seeds in this game were consumable items. Restocking in the virtual world meant spending in-game currency at the seed shop, but I had already burned all my starting gold. Normally, a player sells harvested crops directly to the system to fund new seeds and expand the ranch. Because I was hauling every single melon into the real world for cash, I had zero virtual money to reinvest. Then it hit me, why not test if ordinary seeds bought in the real world could be planted in the game? I locked up my shop and walked over to the county seed supply depot, where the lady at the counter gave me a friendly greeting. I asked if they had seedless watermelon seeds while browsing the neat rows of farming supplies. She smiled and offered their standard seedless variety at 80 yuan per 50 grams. I bought 2 jin to start, hurried back to my locked shop, warped into the game, and dumped them into the ranch seed storage box. Exiting back to the shop, I checked my mental interface and saw a brand new packet of seeds sitting right inside the virtual toolbox. The item description tagged them as quality 1 seedless watermelon seeds that would produce standard seedless watermelons. I immediately directed my character over to the 9 empty plots and planted every single one. Seeing all 12 plots show active green crops filled me with pure relief, proving real-world seeds worked flawlessly in the game. Still, one big question lingered: would melons grown from regular outside seeds match the insane flavor of the game seeds? Later that afternoon, another vendor in the WeChat group swept in and bought my last 30 watermelons in one clean shot. I slashed prices on all my leftover cabbages and tomatoes to clear the shelves, deciding to ditch regular groceries and go all in on melons. I locked up the empty shop and rode home, where my mom had already set the dinner table. The second I finished my bowl, I closed my eyes and tuned back into the mental ranch. Bug alerts were flashing over the older 12 plots, while wild weeds were already trying to strangle the 12 newer seedling beds. With 2 quick mental commands, I swept away every insect and hoed the weeds clean in seconds. My phone buzzed with a message from Moching, saying her audit was wrapping up tomorrow and asking me to pick her up with some fresh watermelon. Okay, my dear wife, I replied right away. Unlike me, Moching had an uncle in the local government, which helped her land a stable civil servant position at the tax bureau right after graduation. She had been dispatched on a special task force to audit a major township enterprise after their executives got caught bragging on doing. As a junior auditor, Moching spent her days buried under balance sheets and tax calculations out in the countryside. We hopped on a video call and chatted about everything until late into the night. When I opened my eyes the next morning, all 24 watermelon plots in the ranch had reached peak maturity. The melons grown from real-world seeds looked just as lush, massive, and dark-striped as the original game crops. I mentally harvested one of the real seed plots into storage and warped into the virtual ranch to see for myself. Stepping into the barn, 16 massive melons from that single plot were already stacked neatly on the wooden floor. I picked one up, and the floating item card confirmed the exact same quality 1 stats with +1 boost to sweetness, texture, and flavor. I brought the melon back to the rental kitchen, sliced it open on the cutting board, and took a bite to verify the taste. The flavor was identical, meaning I could buy cheap seeds in town and produce infinite premium melons without any quality drop. My mom walked in and nagged me about ruining my stomach with cold fruit so early in the morning. I smiled and told her I was just doing quality control before heading out to sell the batch. She took a bite to test my claims, and her eyes went wide in surprise at how ridiculously sweet and juicy it was. After running a produce shop her entire life, she knew instantly that melons of this caliber would fly off the shelves. I brought up the mental game, harvested all 24 plots, cleared the dry vines, and seeded the whole field again. That meant another massive harvest would be ready by evening, keeping the profit pipeline flowing. After eating breakfast with my mom, I hopped on my tricycle and rode out to the secluded warehouse. Locked the warehouse door, entered the ranch, and found a towering mountain of 418 quality 1 melons in the barn. Tucked behind the main stack were 3 strange, perfectly round watermelons labeled quality 2. Their dark stripes were noticeably deeper, and their shape was completely spherical compared to standard melons. I checked the floating card and saw +2 boosts across deliciousness, sweetness, and texture, plus a brand new +2 aftertaste stat. The description claimed the flavor was so addictive it could hijack your taste buds, which sounded a bit dramatic for a fruit. Setting curiosity aside, I extracted all 418 melons into the warehouse and blasted a promo video to the WeChat group. My phone went crazy with alerts as Brother Lou and the other vendors scrambled to place repeat orders at twice their usual volume. Customers who tried the first batch were already coming back for more, forcing the shopkeepers to restock immediately. New vendors from Dongqing and Shuishi Street jumped into my DMs, locking in 20 to 30 melons each. Watching the veterans stock up was all the proof the fence-sitters needed to jump on the bandwagon. A quick tally showed 395 melons booked, basically wiping out my entire morning stockpile. I loaded the cargo flatbed to the brim and rode into the county to start dispatches. Around midday, I pulled onto Market Street to drop off fresh crates for Brother Lou, Brother Qin, and Sister Ai. "Xiao Qin, your melons are flying off the shelves," Brother Lou beamed, immediately tacking on 10 extra melons to his order. I finished unloading for the Market Street trio and rolled back to my shop with only 23 melons left. The 395 melons weighed over 4,400 jin, netting 6,600 yuan, and putting me on track to clear 10,000 by tonight. In a single day, I pulled in what used to take an entire month of grinding behind a grocery counter. I set aside the 3 quality 2 watermelons, eager to see if their flavor really lived up to the system's wild claims. I picked up one of the spheres, halved it with a kitchen knife, tossed 1/2 into the mini fridge, and carved the rest into wedges. The moment I put the knife down, I looked down to find that shameless black dog sitting right beside my legs, craning its neck toward the board. "You really treat this place like your own living room," I muttered, but feeling good about my 10,000 yuan daily haul, I tossed it a piece. I took a bite, and my eyes widened as an explosive wave of crisp sweetness and rich, non-cloying juice flooded my mouth. Even after swallowing, a fragrant, delicate sweetness lingered on my tongue, making a humble fruit taste like a 5-star banquet dessert. My rich college roommate once brought an expensive imported melon to our dorm, but compared to this, that luxury fruit tasted like garbage. Ma Qing was going to absolutely lose her mind over this. I devoured my slice and reached for another, only to see the black dog had already polished off its piece and was boldly pawing at the cutting board. The second I glared, the shameless mutt dropped back down, letting out a pitiful whimper while staring up at me with teary eyes. Climbing onto counters was house pet behavior, and I wondered if this stray had gotten way too comfortable. I ignored it and kept eating, but then the dog started rubbing its head against my shin, grinning with pure flattery. Completely defeated by its hustle, I threw it one last slice and strictly warned it that the buffet was officially closed. 99% of the people in Yuqing had never eaten fruit this elite, and here I was feeding 2 whole slices to a stray mutt. I finished my slices while the dog flopped onto its back by the door, happily exposing its round belly to the world. With some downtime on my hands, I locked up the storefront and stepped directly into the game to explore beyond the farm. But when I walked toward the ranch exit road leading to town, I slammed right into an invisible wall of solid air. Blocked by the level barrier, I wandered the inner ranch instead, checking out wild pastures, future factory plots, and the sparkling river. I popped back out to reality just as Market Street started buzzing with evening shoppers picking up groceries for dinner. All 24 plots had ripened again, so I swept the entire harvest into the barn and reseeded every plot for morning. If I wanted to maintain a 10,000 yuan daily profit, I needed bigger channels, because my neighborhood vendor network could only digest so much. Real volume lived at the East City Commercial Plaza, where the massive RT Mart and giant parking lots pulled in the whole county. Right then, Ma Qing messaged me saying she was back at the county terminal and reminded me to pick her up after 5. I sent a quick reply, shut down the shop, rushed home for a quick shower, and hopped on my electric scooter. I pulled up outside the tax bureau by the Dongqing Riverside just as the 5 o'clock bell rang and workers began filing out. Ma Qing stepped through the main doors in light makeup, looking breathtaking without even trying. Before I could call out, a slicked-back guy named Qin hurried after her, hitting his remote to flash the headlights of a shiny white Audi. Making $5,000 a month as an entry-level clerk, he relied on his wealthy parents and brother-in-law to fund a luxury car just to flex on women. Moqing shut him down cold, telling him straight up that her husband was already here to take her home. She walked right past his Audi and climbed onto the back of my scooter without giving him a second glance. Qin stood frozen in the parking lot clutching his car keys, completely baffled as to how an electric scooter stole his girl. The little scooter hit the open street, and with the evening breeze in our faces, it felt like we were flying at 80 miles an hour. Moqing snuggled in close and asked if I remembered the watermelon she wanted, and I told her I had a massive surprise waiting. I never even brought up the Audi guy, because real trust means you do not get insecure just because other people find your wife attractive. We walked into my shop and Moqing immediately asked for her surprise, so I pulled the chilled half from the fridge. I carved off a thick slice and handed it over, telling her to take a bite. She took a small nibble, and her whole body froze as a burst of crisp sweetness and rich aroma hit her taste buds. "Qin Lin, this is unbelievable," she gasped, swearing she had never tasted anything this good in her entire life. I took a slice myself, realizing that throwing quality 2 melons in the fridge made the crisp flavor 10 times better. If I could find a way to mass-produce these quality 2 spheres, I could easily charge luxury boutique prices and make a fortune. Moqing usually watched her figure like a hawk, but tonight she threw her diet out the window and ate slice after slice until the board was bare. Mass-producing quality 2 melons at luxury prices sounded great, but right now I needed to focus on clearing debt and buying a home for my mom. I walked up behind Moqing, wrapped my arms around her waist, and asked if we could stay out together tonight. She gave me a coquettish look, whining that if she did not go home, her mother would immediately guess she was with me and start nagging. I let out a sigh, pointing out how hard it was holding back when we had been separated for so long. She grabbed my restless hands with a cute snort, suggesting she could call home and claimed she was stuck at a late colleague dinner party. "Great idea," I said, immediately pulling out my phone to book a king-size room with a massive bathtub at the Dongqing Hotel. I checked my leather wallet and made sure I had 2 small umbrellas tucked away, which was more than enough. Moqing repeatedly promised her mom over the phone that she was nowhere near me and would never let anyone take advantage of her. She hung up and gripped my arm, asking if we should just come clean to our families so we could live together every day. I told her to give me a little time, knowing an abrupt reveal right now would only leave my mom drowning in guilt and her parents bitter. A 100-square-meter apartment ran $12,000 a meter, demanding $400,000 down and $600,000 total with renovations. Selling 24 plots of watermelons daily meant I could pull in that entire $600,000 in just 2 months. And once my character leveled up to unlock new features, that timeline would shrink even further. That way I could bring her home with a brand new house, give her a huge surprise, and give her parents the respect they deserved. Moqing beamed and agreed, never once second-guessing the man she chose to spend her life with. The Dongqing Hotel sat right beside the Riverside Park, easily the fanciest spot in the entire county. People always bragged about the gorgeous night view from the upper floors, but let us be honest, who checks into a luxury room to stare out the window? I flashed my ID at the front desk, took the electronic key card, and led Moqing into the elevator. The moment the door clicked shut behind us, I pulled her close, kissed her, and carried our date straight into the master bathtub. After a wild night, we hit a late-night street stall for spicy noodles before I dropped her safely at her door. Back in my bedroom, I checked the mental farm and saw multiple weed and bug warnings I had completely ignored during our date. All 24 watermelon plots were fully ripe and packed to bursting. I mentally harvested the crops into the storage barn, cleared the vines, and dropped new seeds to prep the evening run. Locking the bedroom door, I shifted physically into the ranch barn to inspect the accumulated stockpile. Between yesterday evening and this morning, the storage shed held 836 quality 1 melons, along with 7 rare quality 2 spheres. I swallowed a fast bowl of porridge, rode out to the secluded warehouse, and pulled all 843 melons into reality. I recorded a dynamic video of the mountain of fruit, and blasted it straight to the fruit and vegetable WeChat group. The regular vendors jumped on it instantly, but no new buyers joined because the group was mostly packed with small seafood and vegetable stalls. Even so, the existing network locked in 411 melons for the morning dispatch. I spent 3 hours hauling load after load across town, delivering 4,500 Jin and banking 6,700 yuan. Back at the warehouse, 422 melons sat untouched, with another 400 ripening by afternoon, screaming for a massive new sales channel. I locked my eyes on the RT-Mart supermarket inside Oriental Commercial Plaza, the undisputed retail heavyweight of Yuan County. Sitting on the ground floor with a giant parking lot, cinemas, and bars all around it, RT-Mart pulled more daily shoppers than every fruit stall in town combined. I strapped 2 sample watermelons to my electric scooter and rode straight over to make my pitch. Big supermarkets always had formal bidding channels, but everyone in the trade knew purchasing managers took off-the-book stock if the discount was right. Walking into the supermarket back offices, I slipped a fresh pack of cigarettes to the security guard to find the purchasing manager. The guard pocketed the smokes with a grin, grabbed one of my melons, and escorted me straight to Manager Qin's office. Manager Qin, a portly, greasy man with thinning hair, patted the melons and gave them a nod, admitting they looked high grade. "So, Manager Qin, think these could move on your shelves?" I asked, getting straight to business. He instantly put on a troubled face, whining about loyalty to existing distributors and preaching about honesty in business. Seeing right through his routine, I cut my normal wholesale rate from 1.5 down to 1.3. He kept frowning and sighed, complaining about how complicated and difficult his position was. I dropped it to 1.2, knowing zero production costs meant every cent remained pure profit in my pocket. His troubled frown vanished into a greasy smile, agreeing to take my stock as long as the invoice read 1.4. I nodded with a polite smile, playing along while watching the backdoor kickback unfold right in front of me. Billing it at 1.4 gave the supermarket a small discount, while the extra 20 cents a jean slipped straight into Manager Chen's pocket. 1,000 kilos a day, that slimy bastard was pocketing 30 grand a month on watermelons alone, and that was just one item in the store. How much extra kickback cash Manager Qin pocketed each month was none of my business, since dirty hands and big corporate chains usually meant deep connections. The arrangement worked heavily in my favor anyway, because individual purchase orders meant prompt invoice settlements, with zero payment delays. "Xiao Qin, how many melons can you actually supply?" Manager Qin asked, leaning forward with his eyes locked on volume. I told him my first batch was 800 melons over 10 Jin each, promising 400 more tonight, and at least 800 daily. He ran the numbers in his head with a greasy smile, telling me to bring daily invoices so finance could wire the cash immediately. "Thanks for the help, Manager Qin," I said, giving a polite nod before heading out the door. Feeling good about his new revenue stream, Manager Qin had my 2 sample watermelons sliced open and handed out to the staff in the outer office. I rode back to the warehouse and hauled 422 melons to the RT-Mart loading dock across 2 heavy tricycle trips, weighing in at 4,557 Jin. The virtual ranch harvest yielded 411 quality 1 watermelons and 3 more rare quality 2 spheres. I replanted the field, pulled all 411 quality 1 melons into reality, and shuttled them over to the supermarket dock for another 4,471 Jin. Combined with the morning haul, the total weight hit 90.28 Jin, and handing the invoice to Manager Qin triggered an instant wire of 10,899 yuan. In 4 short days, my near-empty account bounced back past 31,000 yuan, locking in a steady 10,000 daily cash flow. In high spirits, I grabbed a shopping basket and strolled through the supermarket aisles to pick up dinner supplies for home. Passing the produce displays, my jaw dropped when I saw my own watermelons branded as special quality fruit with a price tag of 3 yuan per Jin. Controlling distribution channels really made you king, letting them double their margin on my zero-cost crop while I walked away without a trace of envy. Back home, another round of weed and bug alerts chimed in my skull, and I cleared them out with a quick mental command before falling asleep. The next morning, my phone buzzed with early wholesale orders from shop owners who had clearly gotten hooked on my melons. I headed to the warehouse and materialized 428 quality 1 watermelons across the concrete floor. I uploaded a quick clip to the group, delivering 408 melons across town for over 4,700 Jin, collecting 7,100 yuan. The next batch was loaded straight to RT-Mart, adding 4,970 Jin and nearly 6,000 yuan to the daily total. Pulling in over 13,000 in a single day pushed my total bank balance past 46,000 yuan. Worried that moving tons of fruit without proper paperwork might trigger legal trouble, I rushed to the Industry and Commerce Bureau to apply for a wholesale license. After filling out forms for an hour, the clerk told me small-scale fruit growers selling their own crop were legally exempt from wholesale licensing under Article 35. I got home relieved, and a sudden system announcement rang in my mind that my character had leveled up, unlocking level 2 land upgrades. 6 new plots lit up in the virtual ranch, alongside an upgrade counter showing 0 out of 6 level 2 plots ready for enhancement. I used my mind to equip axes and hammers, smashing boulders, chopping wood, and ripping out weeds across the 6 new plots. I hoed the 6 plots and planted watermelon seeds, deciding to sell this specific batch strictly inside the game to generate in-game gold. Harvesting those 6 plots twice a day would generate enough virtual currency to upgrade 1 level 2 plot every 2 days. Over the next 2 days, real-world melon sales pumped 26,000 yuan into my account, lifting my balance to over 72. With enough in-game gold accumulated, I triggered the upgrade and watched my very first plot transform into rich, fertile level 2 soil. With my first level 2 plot ready, I guided my character past the ranch gates to check out the Mineral Town seed shop. The seed catalog was packed with real and fantasy crops, but each packet was locked behind specific soil grade requirements. Level 2 fruits were priced way higher than watermelons, though fruit tree saplings had long growth cycles and planting hassles that made them too obvious to explain. I scrolled until I spotted standard red strawberries, a level 2 crop that fit my operation like a glove. A fast online search confirmed strawberries were out of season, letting ordinary berries command 15 to 25 yuan a kilo. I sprinted back to the county agricultural depot, where the friendly saleswoman quoted red strawberry seeds at 45 yuan per packet. I paid for the seeds, dashed home, and warped them straight into the ranch storage box. Back in the game interface, I scattered the strawberry seeds across my newly upgraded level 2 soil. After a round of late-night watering, weeding, and bug hunting, I drifted off to sleep buzzing with anticipation. Morning came, and right beside the massive sea of green watermelons sat a stunning field of bright red berries nestled in green leaves. Stepping into the strawberry patch took me right back to our college days, when Maching and I would spend whole afternoons picking berries together. I plucked a few plump, crimson berries, and the quality 1 item card popped up with the familiar +1 boost to sweetness, texture, and flavor. I popped one into my mouth, and an explosion of tender, aromatic juice burst across my tongue in a wave of pure perfection. Regular strawberries fetched up to 25 yuan, but with this insane flavor, these berries were easily worth even more. I harvested 50 kilos of strawberries and sold them directly to the game shop to accelerate the remaining level 2 plot upgrades. Reinvesting every single strawberry into virtual gold sped up the upgrade process, completing all 6 level 2 plots in just 7 days. Across that same week, wholesale watermelon deliveries brought in 94,000 yuan. Pushing my bank balance to over 166 grand in less than 2 weeks was something I never could have dreamed of, and with 6 level 2 plots now running. Waking up early, I checked my mental screen and saw 24 watermelon plots and 6 strawberry plots gleaming with ripe fruit. I mentally harvested both crops straight to storage, cleared the withered vines, and seeded the whole field for the next cycle. Today was the day I started pushing red strawberries into the market. Game produce never struggled to sell, and offloading them to RT-Mart was the easiest route as long as I nailed down the right wholesale rate. Standard strawberries in Yuching wholesaled for 15 yuan a gene, but my crop was far too good to be dumped at baseline prices. I skipped past ordinary berries to look up high-volume premium varieties across regional markets. Creamy red berries pulled 30 yuan a gene, Daily Angshan hit 36, and Yaoxiang commanded. These were top-tier specialty cultivars sitting miles above common local fruit. Having eaten those varieties before, I knew my quality 1 berries tasted way better, making 30 yuan a gene an easy call. If the supermarket branded my watermelons as special quality, these berries definitely deserve the exact same title. I rode out to the warehouse and warped into the virtual ranch storage room to inspect the morning haul. The barn held 423 quality 1 watermelons, flanked by 5 rare quality 2 spheres. The strawberry crates held 300 gene of quality 1 berries, alongside 2 whole gene of quality 2 gems. I picked up a few quality 2 berries and the floating card flashed +2 boosts to sweetness, texture, and aftertaste. I popped one into my mouth without hesitation. I closed my eyes in pure bliss as the rich sweetness coated my tongue, leaving me wanting more until I popped a second berry into my mouth. Just like the watermelons, the +2 stat bonuses transformed these quality 2 berries into a rare gourmet delicacy. Back in college, my wealthy roommate bought imported milk strawberries at 200 yuan a kilo, but compared to this, that luxury fruit tasted like garbage. I hauled 4098 Qin of watermelons to my Market Street vendors, pocketing 6,147 yuan in morning deliveries. I packed 2 kilos of quality 1 strawberries into my scooter basket and rode over to RT-Mart to pitch Manager Qin. At 30 yuan a Qin, 300 Qin of strawberries would net 9 grand a run, beating out 24 plots of watermelons in a single shot. Having pocketed over 10 grand in kickbacks from me over the last 10 days, Manager Qin greeted me with a huge smile, upgrading my title from Xiao Qin to President Qin. He walked me over to his elaborate tea table, personally rinsing the clay cups and brewing a pot of hot tea. Down south, business guys treat tea tables like status symbols, thinking brewing tea somehow makes them look respectable and cultured. "What is on your mind, Manager Qin?" I asked with a smile, taking a sip of hot tea. He got straight to the point, praising how my watermelons had been flying off the shelves for the past 10 days. He told me an RT-Mart branch over in Shaoqing wanted in on the action, and would buy every single melon I could produce. I could tell the market leverage had completely flipped in my favor. Game crops were not just easy to sell, they commanded premium prices that ordinary farm produce could never touch. Sourcing stock for Shaoqing was clearly Manager Qin's personal hustle to juice store profits and line his own pockets with another fat kickback cut. My ranch plots were locked to fixed daily cycles, putting a hard ceiling on how many melons I could grow. I apologized about the melon cap, but pivoted immediately to pitch my daily 500 Qin strawberry supply, sliding the sample basket across the tea table. Manager Qin took a bite of a strawberry, and his eyes shot wide in shock at the rich sweetness exploding across his palate. In all his years as purchasing manager, none of the fancy high-altitude berries he bought for 55 yuan a kilo even came close to this flavor. He did not even pause to breathe, shoving a second, a third, and over a dozen berries into his mouth in a frantic eating frenzy. Wiping sticky red juice from his chin, he leaned forward and asked for my wholesale price. 30 yuan a Qin, I replied calmly, branding them as special quality berries. Manager Qin jumped on the deal immediately, agreeing to take every berry on the condition that we mark the invoice at 32. Billing it at 32 let him retail them at 40 or more, padding store profits while securing major performance credit for himself. That worked for me, so I smiled and locked in the 32 yuan invoice rate. Manager Qin beamed with delight, poured fresh cups of tea, and raised his cup to toast our lucrative partnership. We clinked cups, and I promised morning and evening strawberry deliveries right alongside the melon shipments. He told me to reach out whenever dispatches were ready, and I stepped out of the office on cloud 9. Strawberries bruise easily, so I stopped by a market packaging shop to pick up specialized fruit baskets. Unlike thick-skinned melons, tender berries needed cushioned crates and gentle handling to stay picture perfect. I rode back to the warehouse and transferred all 300 Qin of morning strawberries into my new cushioned baskets. 2 daily harvests of 300 Qin meant these 6 level 2 plots alone would rake in 18,000 yuan every single day. Stacking that on top of my daily watermelon deliveries put me right on the doorstep of pulling in 1,000,000 yuan a month. Right after I dropped the strawberries at RT-Mart, the sky opened up and rain poured over the city. By the time the downpour eased into a drizzle, it was already midday when I pulled back onto Market Street. Outside my shop, that scruffy black dog was huddled under the overhang, soaking wet and licking rain from its coat. After 10 straight days of hanging around without getting chased off, the mutt seemed determined to make my doorway its permanent home. Seeing me walk up, the dog stood on its paws, barking with a wide, goofy canine grin. I ignored it, unlocked the metal door, and pulled out my phone to order lunch when my stomach started growling. I ordered 2 massive fried chicken drumsticks and 2 eggs, enjoying the simple luxury of spending without checking my wallet. Just before checking out, I caught the dog tiptoeing inside to squat right by the aisle, staring straight at me. I tapped the screen and added a 3rd chicken drumstick to the cart before hitting pay. Having a stray dog fawn over me every day was a weird feeling, kind of like someone getting addicted to a simp attention. The delivery guy arrived shortly after, handing over the steaming hot takeout bag. I unpacked the boxes on the table, and the dog stood up on its hind legs, staring hungrily at the fried chicken. I grabbed a drumstick and took a loud, theatrical bite just to tease the beggar. The dog stretched its snout forward with its tongue hanging out, eagerly waiting for a discarded bone. Chuckling at its pathetic face, I picked up a whole meaty drumstick and tossed it right to its paws. The black dog reacted with lightning reflexes, snapping its jaws shut around the flying drumstick midair. Landing on its paws, its eyes bulged in pure shock, realizing it caught a thick, juicy drumstick instead of a stripped bone. I kept eating while pulling up the ranch screen in my head, seeing fresh pest alerts and dry dirt flashing across the plots. With a couple of mental clicks, I wiped out the bugs, soaked the soil with virtual water, and finished off my lunch. As I stood up to pack my trash, the black dog slinked over to rub its head against my calf, testing the waters before scampering back to guard the doorway. The ranch harvest produced 421 watermelons and 301 gene of strawberries. I pulled the crops into reality, hauled them to our T-Mart in batches, and handed the dispatch slips to Manager Qin to settle up. A bank alert flashed on my phone, confirming a deposit of over 26,000 yuan and pushing my total savings to nearly 200 grand. I parked the tricycle at my shop, jumped on the electric scooter, and rode over to the tax bureau to pick up Ma Qing. The second I pulled up to the gate, that same slicked-back guy Chen Hao walked out of the building. He scowled at my scooter, clicked his key fob, and flashed his Audi headlights in a blatant attempt to flex. Some guys are just that shallow, thinking their entire worth comes down to a car, a house, and showing off. Right then, a chubby coworker walked up and asked why Chen Hao was not waiting to confess his feelings to Ma Qing. That casual remark completely wrecked Chen Hao's smug routine, sending him scurrying silently toward his car. He stood by the door, completely baffled as to how an electric scooter guy managed to steal such a gorgeous woman. He fumed in silence, completely lost as to how an electric scooter guy managed to win over such a high-class girl while he stayed single. The chubby coworker shrugged off his bad mood, hopped into his silver Jetta, and drove away. Ma Qing called out with a bright smile, jogging over to hop onto the pillion and wrapping her arms tight around my waist. Onto the Riverside Avenue and asked if she wanted me to take her home or if we should go out for a feast. She thought about it and suggested buying groceries to cook at my place, since it had been a while since she visited my mom. Called my mom so she could celebrate, and banked the scooter toward our T-Mart to grab dinner supplies. I normally hate wandering retail aisles, but holding Ma Qing's hand made grocery shopping feel like paradise. We walked out loaded down with shopping bags packed with fresh greens, pork, and seafood. The second we stepped through the apartment door, my mom's face lit up with pure joy at the sight of Ma Qing. She was completely sold on Ma Qing, thanking the heavens that her son found such a gentle, unpretentious, and respectful girl. Ma Qing grabbed the shopping bags with a sweet smile, heading straight for the sink without a trace of judgment for our cramped rental. The two of them took over the stove with endless laughter, leaving me feeling like an unneeded spectator in my own kitchen. Ma Qing was a fantastic cook, and seeing a full spread on the table gave my mom the best appetite she had in months. After dinner, I went to my room and brought out 2 pounds of fresh quality 2 strawberries. Shaolin, what are those? My mom asked, and I set the plate down, telling them both to take a bite. My mom slid the entire bowl straight in front of Ma Qing, insisting strawberries were packed with nutrients and great for her skin. Ma Qing took a delicate bite, her eyes shooting wide as she gasped, asking how on earth a strawberry could taste this good. I smiled with pride, telling them these were special quality berries with unmatched flavor and aftertaste that nobody else could buy. She nodded vigorously, swearing every strawberry she had ever eaten in her life was absolute trash compared to this one. My mom looked doubtful, having spent decades in the fruit business knowing ordinary strawberries all tasted pretty much the same. But the second she took a bite, her face froze in disbelief as the sweet, rich aftertaste lingered on her tongue. After selling produce her entire life and tasting hundreds of batches every year, she could not believe her own son had brought home a fruit this extraordinary. I leaned against the kitchen doorway, smiling as Ma Qing and my mom chatted over soapy dishes at the sink. Ma Qing's visit brought a rare smile to my mom's face, and keeping her spirits high was the best medicine for her health. My mom desperately wanted to welcome Ma Qing as her daughter-in-law, but our mountain of debt kept her silent. That was why I needed a house down payment as fast as possible, so I could hand my mom our marriage certificate and bring Ma Qing home openly. People might call it small-minded, but protecting my family and the woman I loved mattered far more than conquer-the-world ambitions. Looking into the mental game, I wished for a cheat code to max out my level, cover every field in strawberries, and pull in millions daily. When it was time to leave, my mom walked us all the way down to the courtyard, nagging me to drive slowly and keep Ma Qing safe. "Do not worry, Mom," I smiled, steering the scooter out into the evening traffic. We pulled into Dongqing, and the upscale paved grounds felt like another planet compared to my rundown rental. Yuqing housing prices were insane, with this luxury compound running 14,000 a square meter, pushing a furnished place past 2 million yuan. Under normal wages, clearing my family debt would take 5 years, and saving a down payment here would take another 5. I used to get a knot in my chest every time I dropped her off, terrified I was dragging her down. Thank goodness the game system dragged me out of that pit of helplessness. Sensing my mood, Ma Qing pressed her cheek to my back, offering to confess our marriage to our parents and fight beside me. I took her hand and told her to give me a little time, promising my booming wholesale business would bring her home soon. I believe you, she whispered, those simple words carrying more weight than anything in the world. Before she stepped away, I pulled out another clear bag loaded with 2 pounds of fresh quality 2 strawberries. There is more, she asked with wide, surprised eyes, considering we had just polished off an entire bowl back at my place. As long as you like them, there is plenty more where that came from, I smiled. She gave me a sweet kiss on the cheek, clutching the fruit bag tightly as she bounded happily toward the lobby doors. Stepping into her modern living room, she found her mother Chen Xiao and fashionable sister-in-law Li Jiawen watching TV on the sofa. Jiawen waved her over with a proud grin, showing off a batch of imported luxury strawberries she bought through a college friend for 200 yuan a pound. She popped one straight into Ma Qing's mouth, eagerly waiting for her to praise the 200 yuan luxury fruit. Ma Qing chewed with an awkward grimace, asking if her sister-in-law had been completely ripped off by that price tag. Jiawen blinked in confusion, insisting her college friend would never sell her bad fruit. Ma Qing reached into her bag, pulled out a quality 2 berry, and told Jiawen to open wide. The second Jiawen bit down, she froze in shock as an explosion of sweet, fragrant juice wrecked her expectations. Where did you get these? She gasped, convinced fruit this incredible had to cost a fortune. Qin Lin gave them to me from his shop, Ma Qing replied casually, guessing they probably cost 20 yuan a pound. Jiawen cried out in agony, realizing her 200 yuan luxury berries were garbage and swearing off her college friendship on the spot. Hearing my name, Ma Qing's mother frowned and asked how I was doing lately. Ma Qing defended my new wholesale venture with a quick smile before retreating to her bedroom to avoid the grilling. Jiawen spoke up for me, pointing out that I was a hard-working guy who treated Ma Qing right. My mother-in-law sighed, worrying that my family debt would drag her daughter into a lifetime of misery. The next morning, I harvested another round of ripe watermelons and strawberries before reseeding every plot. After a quick breakfast, I extracted the melons at the warehouse and delivered the morning orders to Brother Lu on Market Street. After weighing the crates, Brother Lu gave me an awkward look, asking if I could cut my wholesale rate by 2 cents because market prices were tumbling. I frowned in surprise, wondering why watermelon prices were crashing this early in the season. Then it hit me. Dumping 9,000 kilos of top-tier melons onto a small county every single day had wrecked local supply and demand. Once melon prices tanked below a yuan, the margins were not worth my time, making a crop pivot the only smart move. That evening at our T-Mart, Manager Chen demanded the exact same price cut, locking in my decision to pull the plug on watermelons. Leaving the supermarket, I posted an excuse to the vendor group claiming my rural relative had sold off his entire melon harvest. I felt zero guilt dropping supply, since this was business without contracts, and I had zero obligation to prop up their margins. I opened the mental game, guiding my character back to the Mineral Town seed shop to find a basic crop worth far more than watermelons. I researched online for high-value, safe options, needing a crop that was discreet, fast-growing, and easy to explain. After digging through the seed catalog, I found okra, the most expensive basic crop in the game with a rapid harvest cycle matching watermelons. Okra grew from simple seeds without saplings or complex trellises, making it just as discreet and easy to handle as melons. Southern wholesale prices hit over 6 yuan a gene, and since my production cost was essentially zero, the profit margins were enormous. I locked up the shop, hurried over to the agricultural depot, and bought a heavy sack of commercial okra seeds. Back home, I warped the seeds into the ranch chest, hoed up the old watermelon sprouts, and planted all 24 plots with okra. Waking up early, I opened the mental game to find 30 plots of strawberries and okra glowing in rich red and green hues. I mentally swept the harvest into the barn and warped straight into the game to check the yield. The strawberry crates held 302 gene of quality 1 berries and 2 gene of quality 2 gems. The okra section was loaded with 1500 gene of quality 1 pods alongside 4 gene of quality 2 stock. Each plot averaged over 60 gene, meaning 6 plots alone would pull in 9 grand a run, easily crushing 2 full batches of watermelon. I picked up both grades of okra, noticing the quality 2 pods were significantly darker and larger. The quality 1 card listed medicinal boosts to lactation, urinary tract relief, and kidney nourishment. The quality 2 card showed extremely potent medicinal properties, with +2 boosts across lactation, urination, and kidney essence. I stared at the stat cards in surprise, having had no idea okra carried such specific health buffs. Lactation regulation meant healthier nursing mothers and fuller babies, keeping women in top shape. Smooth urination was an instant fix for guys dealing with dripping prostate issues and urinary blockages. Kidney nourishment and essence replenishment needed zero explanation, serving as the ultimate stamina booster every man dreamed of. Given how wild the +2 watermelons and strawberries were, quality 2 okra was bound to hit with serious force. I exited the game, cleaned up, and rode out to the warehouse. The plan was to deliver the morning strawberries to RT Mart and pitch the fresh okra straight to Manager Qin. I dropped 302 Gene of morning strawberries at the RT Mart loading dock for weighing and signing. With the crates checked in, I headed down the administrative hallway toward Manager Qin's office. Right outside his door, a heavily perfumed woman in provocative clothes brushed past me, faint red marks visible on her collarbone. I could not help but smirk, realizing old Qin lived quite the colorful lifestyle behind closed doors. Manager Qin waved me over to his tea table, asking if I had a final answer on lowering watermelon prices. I told him I was done with watermelons, sliding a fresh sample bag of green okra across the dark wood. Okra, Manager Qin gasped, his eyes lighting up in instant recognition. Balancing a fierce wife at home with a younger fling on the side meant the man practically lived on kidney tonics. Yep, okra is my new main crop, I confirmed with a casual nod. He leaned in to ask for my wholesale price, subtly hinting that a good rate made things easier with his bosses. Our past deals had made him great kickbacks while keeping store leadership thrilled with high-margin sales. I told him my rate was 6 yuan a gene, well below market value, with 3,000 gene available daily. 6 yuan, he blurted out, locking in the entire 3,000 gene supply on the spot. He already had intel that local okra prices were climbing to 7 yuan, and even higher over in Shaoxing. Whatever Yuqing could not sell could easily be diverted to the Shaoxing branch under the same management umbrella. I smiled and agreed, promising to haul the okra over in batches throughout the day. Manager Qin beamed, asking me to tack 50 cents onto the invoice rate so he could make some hard-earned money. Hard-earned money? Pocketing $1,500 a day just for signing a receipt was the easiest graft on the planet. Between strawberries and okra, he was raking in 2,700 yuan a day from me alone, living like a king behind his desk. I wrapped up the deal and headed out, leaving him to his tea. The ranch harvest produced another 1,500 gene of okra and 6 whole gene of quality 2 stock. I hauled the evening load to RT Mart and handed the stamped slips to finance to settle up. Strawberries brought in over 18,000 and okra matched it, pulling 36,150 yuan in a single day. A bank alert popped up confirming the transfer, pushing my total savings past 242,000. In high spirits, I got home, hopped into the game, and pulled 2 pounds of quality 2 okra into reality. I walked into the kitchen and asked my mom to cook the pods for dinner. My mom frowned at the pods, warning me that young couples should practice moderation rather than leaning on heavy tonics. Blushing in embarrassment, I explained I was wholesaling okra and just needed to test my own product. She let it slide with a nod, knowing I always thought things through before making business moves. Decades of haggling behind market stalls meant she could not offer big business advice, so she trusted my lead completely. My mom served the blanched okra with soy dipping sauce, and the crisp texture was delicious. A warm, soothing surge of heat spread straight through my waist and kidneys. The +2 kidney essence buff was definitely doing its job. The next morning proved almost too effective, leaving me locked in an unyielding state all morning. Once I got up, my whole body buzzed with boundless stamina and sharp mental focus. If it worked this well on a healthy guy like me, tired, philandering men like Manager Qin would lose their minds for it. Back on Market Street, I rolled up the metal shutter, and that scruffy black dog came bounding to my feet with happy barks. "Come on, I am taking you home," I said, grabbing 2 bags of kibble and snapping a leash onto its collar. The dog barked with sudden excitement, looking like it understood every single word. Before I could figure out how to load it, the mutt hopped right onto the scooter footrest, rested its front paws on the cowl, and barked to hurry me up. I used to think viral videos of genius dogs were fake, but this little guy was practically sentient. I twisted the throttle, cruising home with the newest member of our household riding in front. The second we reached the doorway and I turned the key, the dog let out a loud, proud bark. "Shaolin, why on earth did you bring a dog home?" my mom asked, stepping up to the door in surprise. "It is a long story," I laughed, explaining the whole 10-day stakeout outside my shop before telling her I had officially adopted it. My mom squatted down and patted its head, and the dog leaned into her touch, gently licking her palm. She praised its manners, reminding me that dogs bring wealth and good fortune before asking what its name was. "Since it came to bring us prosperity, let us call it Wankai," I grinned. "Wankai it is," my mom chuckled, calling out the name to test its reaction. Wankai startled for a second before barking back, instantly accepting its new identity. After dinner, I filled a bowl with kibble while my mom flattened a cardboard box into a cozy corner bed for the night. Back in my room, I cleared away a fresh patch of virtual weeds before texting Moching to tell her all about Wankai. The next morning, I harvested another batch of ripe strawberries and okra, replanting the 30 plots in seconds. Opening my bedroom door, I found Wankai already waiting, whimpering happily as he brushed against my shins. The black dog darted frantically between market stalls, its dark eyes wide with helpless terror. Catching my familiar scent, it spotted me walking up the street, and a glimmer of hope sparked in its eyes. It let out an urgent bark, sprinting straight toward me in pure desperation. That distraction gave the officers their chance, and a heavy capture net dropped over its head, tightening a thick noose around its neck. The poor mutt cried out in sheer panic, staring right at me with eyes begging for help. An officer hauled over a metal cage, and 3 men wrestled the struggling dog inside before slamming the door shut. The dog barked until the latch clicked, then let out a dejected whimper and slumped down with its head drooping to the metal floor. It seemed ready to accept its fate, but a tiny spark of longing kept its gaze locked in my direction. Feeling that desperate look, I let out a helpless sigh and walked straight toward the officers. I had gotten used to seeing the little beggar every day, and with my bank account exploding, feeding one more mouth was nothing. Seeing me step closer, the black dog scrambled to its paws, its eyes blazing with hope once again. "Captain Lu, this dog and I have a bit of destiny," I said with a smile, asking if they could let it go so I could adopt it. I smoothly slipped an unopened pack of premium Zhonghua cigarettes from Manager Chen right through the truck window. Captain Lu recognized me instantly, having walked this market street often enough to know every shop owner in town. He glanced at the smokes and agreed, but made sure to remind me to get the dog vaccinated, checked out, and properly licensed. "Don't worry, Captain Lu, I'll take it to get vaccinated and registered right away," I promised. Captain Lu gave a slight nod to his squad, signaling them to unlock the transport cage. Walking up to the truck bed, I heard the dog whimpering as it paced nervously behind the wire mesh. The second the door unlatched, it shot out like a rocket, throwing itself against my shins. I crouched down to pat its head, reassuring the trembling hound that everything was fine. It let out a barrage of joyous, triumphant barks, soaking in its newfound freedom. Captain Lu and his men packed into their patrol truck and rolled out down Market Street. With some downtime before the evening harvest, I decided to take it straight to a pet clinic for deworming and shots. I gave a quick whistle, and the mutt trotted obediently right at my heel down the sidewalk. Inside the pet shop, a scruffy, unshaven man was meticulously trimming a small poodle on the table. The contrast was hilarious, watching a guy who neglected his own beard treat an animal with surgeon-level precision. The shopkeeper looked up from his work, setting down his shears to greet us warmly. "Boss, give this little guy a full checkup, a good bath, vaccinations, and deworming," I said. He glanced at the dusty black coat and asked with sudden curiosity if it was a stray. I told him the dog had camped outside my fruit shop for days, so I finally caved and adopted it. The owner told me I was lucky, explaining that a stray choosing its owner proved it had real spirit and felt safe with me. He took the dog to the back, spending an hour and a half carefully checking her health, washing her coat, and giving her shots. Once dried off, the dog looked completely transformed, showing off a glossy jet black coat and sharp, energetic posture. The shopkeeper exclaimed that she was actually a princess, already spayed and clearly raised as someone's beloved pet before getting abandoned. He identified her as a black wolfhound, one of the sharpest and most loyal breeds on Earth. He told me that when an abandoned stray finds a second home, you become its entire universe. He sighed that women might break your heart and leave, but a faithful dog would stay by your side forever without endless demands. I stared at him, realizing this scruffy groomer was not just talking about dogs, but nursing some serious heartbreak of his own. Snapping out of his memories, the guy tallied up the bath, deworming, vaccine, and checkup, giving me a bill for 400 yuan. $400, I gasped inside, amazed at how expensive pet healthcare actually was. It made total sense why a guy who did not bother combing his own hair took such good care of dogs. The margins were insane. The owner suggested grabbing a leash and 2 bags of kibble, reminding me that city walking rules were strict. I told him to add the red leash and 2 bags of food to the bill. That tacked on 50 for the leash and 300 for the food, bringing the grand total to 750 yuan. Dropping 750 in one go made it crystal clear why low-income workers ended up abandoning pets they could not afford. When I picked up the red leash, the dog leaned her head forward in perfect cooperation. The owner shook his head in awe, claiming she was smart enough to go viral on doing. She trotted out of the clinic with her head held high, knowing she finally had a real home. Next stop was the neighborhood sub-district office to submit paperwork before filing at the police station for her official dog license. Bureaucracy moved at a crawl, and evening arrived with forms still caught in the system. I pushed the paperwork to the next day, left the dog guarding the fruit shop, and checked my mental fields. The evening harvest produced another 5 gene of quality 2 okra alongside standard crops. I replanted the fields, hurried to the warehouse, and pulled all the fresh produce into the real world. At our T-Mart, the scales registered 610 gene of strawberries and over 3,100 gene of okra. Manager Chen rushed down to the loading bay personally, greeting me with unusual excitement. He asked if the weigh-in was done, holding out the settlement manifest with eager hands. I reached into the tricycle bed and handed him 5 pounds of quality 2 okra, claiming I had to beg around just to source it. I deliberately held back the other 5 pounds, knowing artificial scarcity kept buyers desperate. Clutching the bag with pure joy, Manager Chen pulled me to a quiet corner of the loading dock to whisper. He offered to pay full invoice price with 0 kickbacks if I could guarantee him a daily supply of this special okra. Giving up thousands in kickback cash proved how far the man was willing to go for bedroom stamina and peace of mind. Finance processed the delivery slips without deductions, tallying 19,000 for strawberries, 20,000 for okra, and 2 grand for the quality 2 batch. That brought my daily haul to 39,735 yuan, flirting with 40 grand a day. A bank notification flashed across my screen, pushing my total deposits past the 300,000 mark to 318. Back in my room, I pulled a few virtual weeds across the ranch before opening WeChat to tell Moching all about Wankai. The next morning, I harvested another 30 plots of ripe strawberries and okra, replanting the entire field with a single thought. Opening my bedroom door, I found Wankai already waiting on the floor, whimpering softly and rubbing against my legs. My mom brought out 2 bowls of morning porridge, praising the dog for sitting quietly at my door without barking. I smiled and scratched his ears, thoroughly impressed by how well this little guy handled himself. After finishing 2 bowls of porridge, I said goodbye to my mom and got ready to head out to the warehouse. Wankai rushed out the door carrying his leash in his mouth, whining as if begging me not to leave him behind. I had planned on leaving him at home, but seeing those puppy eyes, I took the leash and brought him along. We took the scooter to Market Street, swapped to the cargo tricycle with Wankai riding in back, and rolled out to the warehouse. Inside the locked warehouse, I activated the dimensional gate and vanished into thin air. Wankai completely lost his mind, sprinting in frantic circles and pawing at the bare concrete where I had just stood. I popped back out carrying loaded strawberry baskets, startling him half to death before vanishing straight back into the game. After watching me jump in and out 3 times in a row, the poor mutt sat down with a totally broken brain. I stacked crates of strawberries and okra into the tricycle bed, taking my baffled co-pilot along for the RT-Mart run. 2 hours of unloading crates and signing off on invoices at RT-Mart wrapped up the morning delivery smoothly. After lunch, Moching stopped by the shop, eager to meet our newest family member after seeing my texts. I stepped forward and pulled her into a warm hug, kissing her right at the front door. Reading the room like a champion, Wankai dashed over and leaned hard against her legs. "Is this Wankai?" she gasped, dropping to her knees to wrap her arms around the pup neck. Wankai whimpered with soft puppy cries, laying on the cute act to charm his new mistress. Totally captivated, she pulled out her phone to snap selfies with her new favorite boy. Wankai leaned right into the frame, flashing a toothy canine grin straight at the lens. The dog pulled off several distinct poses without missing a beat, making Maching laugh as she declared her total love for him. I watched in disbelief, figuring someone must have spent hours training him for photo shoots before he got abandoned. He had an unbelievable talent for reading people, winning over my mom and my wife in less than a day. She played with him until her lunch break ended, ordering me to treat him like royalty before heading off to work. I stretched out on my recliner, guiding my game avatar around Mineral Town to scout for hidden quests. Nothing popped up in town, but the second I walked back onto the ranch, an NPC appeared on the path, locking me into a cutscene. I tapped the prompt, and the guy introduced himself as Zach, the town's shipping deliveryman. Zach told me my massive vegetable deliveries had revitalized the town economy, and he wanted to keep that momentum rolling. Zach handed over a sturdy fishing rod and a pouch of bait, explaining that wild river fish were in high demand at the market. Once he walked off, the rod and bait sat ready in my inventory, officially unlocking the river fishing feature. I guided my pixel farmer straight down the dirt path to the riverbank bordering the southern ranch. I baited the hook, cast the line out into the flowing water, and waited for a bite. A bite alert flashed, the bobber dipped under, and I reeled in a thrashing fish in seconds. A golden system chime echoed in my head, confirming I had landed a quality 2 wild crucian carp. Wild crucian carp was a famous nutritional powerhouse, perfect for strengthening the spleen, boosting circulation, and nursing my mom's weak health. I used to buy them for my mom all the time, knowing clean wild crucian carp went for 30 yuan a gene at local markets. Normal items had no grade, quality 1 gave +1 buffs, and quality 2 doubled every attribute across the board. Best of all, anything originating from the game was guaranteed to be at least quality 1. I ducked into the shop restroom, turned the latch, and warped straight into the game storage room. Beside the vegetable crates sat several stone-holding pools, with a massive fish splashing inside the clear water. I grabbed a landing net, scooped the thrashing giant out of the pool, and checked its item card. The card confirmed a pristine, uncontaminated 10-pound quality 2 crucian carp loaded with 8 different +2 health buffs. Stacking 8 +2 attributes made this fish the ultimate miracle tonic to nurse my mom back to full strength. Growing to a monstrous 10 gene was insane, since even farmed crucian carp took over 3 years to reach 5 pounds. Wild carp over 10 pounds were practically extinct in polluted real-world rivers, where finding a 2-pound fish was considered a jackpot. I spent the rest of the afternoon leaning back in my shop chair, guiding my pixel farmer to cast line after line into the virtual river. Golden chimes rang out one after another, filling my storage with quality 1 black carp, grass carp, and crucian carp. Bites hit almost instantly, hauling in fish practically every second. If that streak kept up, I figured I could easily bank several hundred fish before dinner. But reality hit hard, and the gap between bites dragged out longer and longer. Once I crossed 30 catches, a red system warning flashed across the screen. The river was out of fish, locking me out until the daily refresh reset the spawn. Come on, it is just a game, so why put a ceiling on fishing? Sticking players with a daily cap totally killed the grind. Seeing the river tapped out, I stowed the rod and bait back into my toolbox. I ducked into the restroom, locked the door, and warped straight into the ranch storage room. In the storage room, a school of live fish swirled in a clear holding pool beside an updated tally board. The board tallied 35 fish, 15 crucian carp, 10 grass carp, and 10 black carp. Wild grass carp and black carp easily fetched 20 yuan a gene thanks to their rich nutritional punch. Every single grass carp and black carp in the pool tipped the scales at over 10 gene apiece. Grass and black carp grew naturally big, so seeing 10 gene specimens around wholesale markets was pretty standard. But wild ones tipping 20 or 30 gene were basically extinct in modern rivers. When I checked the detailed item tags, from massive mutants caught me completely off guard. The system listed a 12 gene quality 2 crucian carp right alongside an 11 gene monster. Then came a 25 gene quality 2 black carp, packed with +2 boosts to chi, spleen strength, and liver health. The fourth was a 31 gene quality 2 grass carp that actively stripped away hypertension, liver fire, and headaches. Staring at those 4 behemoths, I could hardly believe the sheer scale: 10-pound crucian, 25-pound black carp, and a 30-pound grass carp. Any one of them would easily sweep a tournament kingfish title, and the quality 2 buffs put them in a league of their own. If I put them on the market, wealthy families with sick relatives would throw blank checks at my feet. Specimen this rare and pure simply did not exist in the real world, no matter how much cash you had to burn. I checked the rest of the 31 fish, confirming every single one carried quality 1 status. You could spot the difference instantly. Wild ones were sleek and light-colored, while farmed fish were fat, dark, and greasy. With only 4 giant kingfish in stock, I was in no rush to sell, saving them all to heal my mom. When evening rolled around, I harvested ripe strawberries and okra, heading to the warehouse to pull everything into reality. Delivering the harvest to our T-Mart brought in 18,500 for strawberries and nearly 20 grand for okra. Another bank SMS confirmed the transfer, pushing my total savings past 356,000 yuan. Back at the shop, I picked up Wankai, ducked into the storage barn, and scooped out the 12-gene quality 2 cushion carp. I threaded a sturdy hemp rope through its gills, ready to haul the giant home for dinner. Back home, I carried the monster fish inside, telling my mom I brought something special to help her recover. My mom gasped in disbelief, knowing wild cushion carp took years just to reach a single pound. She estimated a wild trophy this massive would easily fetch over 2,000 yuan on the open market. She scolded me for wasting such an expensive catch on her when we could have sold it for profit. I told her our wholesale business was booming, and we could easily afford it, grabbing a knife to prep the fish myself. Hearing her nag warmed my heart. Since losing my dad, I cherished every single moment with her. Seeing my stubborn resolve, she let out a fond sigh and tied on her apron to help, gutted, and washed the 12-pound beast in minutes, slicing through the tender meat with ease. Since 12 pounds was way too much for 2 people, we cooked half and tucked the rest into the freezer. My mom whipped up her signature cushion carp and tofu soup, simmering the broth until it turned a rich, milky white. I took my first spoonful at the table, and my eyes lit up at the unbelievable flavor and velvety texture. The soup was so absurdly delicious it made 5-star luxury hotel cooking taste like cardboard. My mom was astonished after taking a bite, wondering out loud if her cooking skills had suddenly leveled up. Finishing her bowl, a soothing wave of warmth coursed straight through her blood vessels and meridians. Her pale face regained a healthy flush, feeling far more relaxed and comfortable than she had in years. Drinking my own bowl, the +2 circulation buff hit like genuine martial arts internal energy. The tonic power was unreal, packing just as much punch as the quality 2 okra. The broth was so ridiculously good I could not resist scooping myself a second heaping bowl. My mom tossed the tender fish scrap to Wankai, and the dog licked the bone completely clean. Setting her chopsticks down, my mom mentioned that Qin Lin was getting engaged and scrambling to borrow cash for his dowry. She reminded me that my late dad had borrowed 50,000 yuan from his family during his illness. Qin Lin family never once pressured us for repayment, knowing how much we were struggling. She urged me to head over tonight to lend a hand and run errands for his big day. I agreed right away, telling her I would go check in on him after dinner. Qin Lin was my childhood buddy from the village who now ran an advertising and wedding planning studio in town. When my dad fell sick, his family lent us 50 grand without a second thought, a lifeline I would never forget. Now that he was getting married, I was paying back every single cent of that 50,000 tonight. What you borrow is kindness, and repaying it without bitterness is just basic human decency. With my pockets full, I needed to set aside time to track down every last creditor and clear our name. After dinner, I logged into the game interface and extracted the 31-pound quality 2 wild grass carp. You cannot show up empty-handed to a friend's house, and this monster came with a -2 blood pressure debuff that Qin Lin's dad desperately needed. Getting a grip on 31 pounds of slime and muscle was a full-contact sport. I barely managed to thread the rope through its gills before it tore out of my hands. It finally wore itself out, gasping on the floor like a deflated balloon. It strayed over to Zhuangyuan Mansion, an older compound tucked outside the city center, where Qin Ren's parents and 2 young women were waiting in the living room. One of the girls was his fiancée Liao Li, a county hospital nurse who had practically moved in already. The other girl sitting beside her was clearly a cousin or a friend tagging along for moral support. Uncle Shui Jin greeted me with a grin that vanished the second his eyes locked onto my hands. The entire room went dead silent. A 31-pound wild grass carp is not something you casually bump into at the local market. I had to hold the thing above my belt line just to keep its tail from mopping their floor. Qin Lin leaped off the couch like he had been stung, yelling about where on earth I found such a leviathan. Here, I told him, passing the beast over. It lowers blood pressure, so make sure your dad gets the lion's share. Qin Lin hoisted it like a trophy while Liao Li and her cousin immediately whipped out their phones to secure their social media clout. Uncle Shuizhen leaned in, touched the scales, and gasped, asking if this was really a wild catch. Pure wild river luck, I told him with a straight face. Qin Lin whined about me catching a beast like this without inviting him along. Next time, he insisted, I had to bring him. Uncle Shuizhen frowned and told me to take it right back. You cannot even buy wild fish of this size with money, he argued, it is far too expensive. A delivered gift never goes back, I told him, quickly changing the subject to my late father's 50,000 yuan medical debt. Uncle Shuizhen tried to wave me off, asking where I got that kind of cash and insisting they already had enough for Qin Ren's engagement. Already tapping the screen. 50,000 yuan transferred in 1 second flat, because debts get paid first, no excuses. Qin Lin stared at his buzzing phone and helplessly flipped the screen toward his dad. The money was already gone from mine and sitting in his. Uncle Shuizhen let out a heavy sigh, went inside to fetch the original IOU, and handed it over while telling me no one my age was this sensible. And Shuizhen agreed, sighing about everything I had endured and nagging Qin Lin to learn even half of my maturity. Qin Lin grumbled in protest, earning an affectionate snap from his mom while Liaoli and her cousin covered their mouths laughing. I finished my tea, offered to help with the wedding preparations if needed, and said my goodbyes as the whole family walked me to the hall. Back inside, Chu Na leaned close to Liaoli and whispered, asking if she should grab my WeChat because I looked sharp and had good character. Liaoli saw right through her and laid out the cold reality. No car, no house, heavy debts, and that 50 grand probably emptied his savings. Chu Na laughed it off instantly, claiming it was just a joke. She was long past the age of dating for romance without financial backing. Liaoli rolled her eyes at her cousin. People with that mindset really earn their spinster status. Coming back inside, Uncle Shuizhen warned Qin Lin to keep the repayment quiet so other creditors would not swarm my doorstep demanding their cut. Qin Lin nodded and immediately suggested boiling a pot of fresh fish soup tonight, claiming the nourishment would help his dad sleep. Uncle Shuizhen rolled his eyes at his son's obvious craving, but he did not say no to tasting a wild beast that big. Late that night, after finishing a steaming bowl of milky broth, a deep soothing warmth spread through everyone at the table. Uncle Shuizhen woke up the next morning completely stunned. His usual morning hypertension dizziness had vanished into thin air, leaving him full of energy. I was back on my daily grind at sunrise, picking strawberries and okra before running the crates over to RT Mart. That afternoon, I jumped back into the game riverbank and confirmed the fishing pool had fully refreshed. 34 fish in one afternoon. The massive ones always triggered as quality 2, while standard catches stayed at quality 1. By the time my evening produce delivery cleared, another 38,216 yuan hit the bank. I locked into the loop: farm, deliver, fish, repeat. The river reliably capped out after 30 to 40 catches each day. The stockpile hit 168 wild fish, including 19 massive quality 2 trophies tucked away in storage. I left them swimming in game storage for now. Once the pile got big enough, I would decide whether to feed them to Manager Chen or cash out at the seafood market. 3 days of strawberries and okra raked in over 113,000 yuan, pushing my bank card balance past 400. I brought an 11-pound quality 2 wild cushion carp straight into the kitchen for dinner. My mom froze mid-step, staring at the prize fish like she had seen a ghost. This was the third monster I had hauled home this week. I laughed and told her not to worry. These monsters were easy to come by, and we would never run out again. My mom just stared at me with question marks in her eyes, caught between assuming I was bragging and looking at 3 impossible, priceless wild fish right on our kitchen counter. After dinner, I spent some time playing with Wonkai. The little guy has gotten super clingy since I took him in, staring up with big bright eyes and rubbing his head against my leg until I give him a scratch. Heading back to my desk, I checked the game farm and saw the strawberry and okra sprouts looking a bit dry. They needed a solid watering. I used the watering can and bucket to soak every plot, then leaned back and opened WeChat to chat with Zhao Moqing. 2 days flew by in a blur of routine. Every morning started with picking ripe strawberries and okra, followed by an early delivery run to RT Mart. Once I got back to the shop on Market Street, I had to plant myself in front of the computer and get to work. The local tax bureau had set a strict deadline for fruit and vegetable shops to complete their annual tax filings. Filing taxes and actually paying them are 2 completely different beasts. Whether you run a full corporation or a one-man stall, you are legally obligated to report your numbers. I had been running this family shop for over a year, but the whole idea of actually owing taxes felt like uncharted territory. Produce vendors get special perks, monthly revenue under 100,000 is exempt from VAT, and local policies let you off the hook completely under 50. Our little shop used to pull in less than 10,000 a month after rent and utilities. With margins sitting around 25%, we never came close to the radar. I had literally never paid a single cent in taxes while enjoying public health care and city perks. In a way, I was basically a freeloader dragging the national average down. Still, I never skipped my monthly filing. It was an obligation, even if my reported tax owed was a clean zero. The county had blocked off these specific 2 days for small fruit and vegetable vendors to submit their records without crowding the halls. People below the line could just slack off and nobody looked twice. But that free ride was officially over for me. My bank balance had skyrocketed from 4,000 to over 400 grand in weeks. If I did not leave a clean tax trail, banking regulators would be kicking down my door in no time. Since I had to pay, I spent the afternoon digging through every paper invoice and digital receipt I had piled up. The brackets were straightforward enough: 5% for modest earnings, scaling all the way up to 23% once net profits broke the 90,000 mark. I made over 400 grand out of thin air, but declaring zero operational cost would look suspicious to any sane auditor. If you claim 100% profit margin on wholesale produce, tax auditors will either laugh in your face or treat you like an idiot before rejecting your paperwork. I spent the entire afternoon hunched over the keyboard, rubbing my stiff neck while accounting software crunched the final numbers. Watermelons brought in 186,000, strawberries totaled 147,000, and okra pulled another 135,000. After factoring in normal market supplier costs, my official taxable profit came out to exactly 105,994 yuan. Running the formulas on everything past the 90,000 threshold left me with a tax bill just over 20,000 yuan. In a small county like Yuqing, most people do not even make 20 grand a month, let alone hand that much over in tax revenue. Paying 20 grand was nothing when it cleaned up over 300,000 yuan in pure, untouchable profit. I uploaded the filing through the portal, hit submit, and left the application pending official review. I harvested another batch of ripe strawberries and okra in the game and sowed fresh seeds across the tilled soil. The moment I opened my bedroom door, Wonkai let out a happy bark and pushed his furry head against my palm. The stray had made a whole ritual out of waiting outside my door just for his morning head scratch. Right after breakfast, Wonkai trotted over with his red leash clenched in his jaws, ready for his morning commute to the shop. After dropping the pup at the shop, I knocked out the morning delivery to RT Mart and checked the portal to see my tax declaration fully approved. Since this was my first time paying taxes and you need physical paperwork for the official invoice, I fired up my beat-up electric scooter and headed down to the tax bureau. The second I parked the scooter outside the entrance, a familiar shiny white Audi pulled in right across from me. Chen Hao stepped out with 2 colleagues in tow, freezing in his tracks the moment he spotted me. Having lost face in front of me twice already, he hated my guts, but with his coworkers watching, he forced on an oily smile. He introduced me with a weird grin, making sure everyone within earshot heard that I was Zhao Moqing's husband. His angle was obvious. If everyone saw her husband riding a cheap scooter, they would stop wondering why he got rejected and start gossiping about her terrible taste. Sure enough, his coworkers stared at me with that judgmental look, wondering how the prettiest girl in the bureau ended up with a guy on a two-wheeler. I recognized the guy immediately, but I kept it polite and gave him a simple nod. Coming to pick Moqing up early on that thing? He sneered, dragging his eyes over my scooter to make sure his buddies took mental notes. I just filed my business taxes, here to pay the bill, I told him, leaving them in the dust as I walked inside. That hit them like a bucket of cold water. Today was the produce tax deadline, one coworker pointed out. If a fruit vendor actually qualifies to pay taxes, the guy must be pulling serious cash. The other one chimed in, saying top vendors easily clear 10 to 20 grand a month, which completely blows past our county civil servant paychecks. Chen Hao stared at my scuffed scooter with his teeth grinding, refusing to believe for a second that a guy on 2 wheels was making more money than him. I walked into the tax bureau's service hall to find the counters completely dead with zero line. Almost everyone handles their business through mobile apps these days, so physical halls are practically ghost towns. The only folks still walking up to service windows are first-timers like me or stubborn older vendors who refuse to trust phone screens. A young clerk with a name tag reading Li Jiahui smiled from behind the glass and asked for my ID card. I slid my card across the counter. Since I had pre-filed online, one quick swipe pulled up my entire tax declaration. Right on cue, Chen Hao slipped through the doors pretending to grab forms, keeping his eyes glued to my counter. The guy was dying to know what a scooter rider owed in taxes, desperate to dig up whatever scraps of superiority he had left. Li Jiahui swiped my card, looked at the monitor, and let out a sharp gasp. 23-year-old fresh out of college clearing over 100 grand a month and paying 20 grand in taxes is practically unheard in our sleepy county. Making 100,000 a year is bragging rights, but pulling that every single month is unicorn territory. To an unmarried clerk, a young guy pulling 7 figures a year is the ultimate golden bachelor. She looked up from the screen, her eyes sparkling with an entirely different kind of interest. Her voice turned sweet as honey, pointing toward the terminal and asking me to scan the QR code for my official receipt. I unlocked my phone, lined up the camera, and authorized the tax payment. A split second later, the counter speaker blasted the automated broadcast. Tax payment 24,378 yuan. Chen Hao froze in place, his eyes bulging out of his head like he had just seen a ghost. Paying over 24 grand in pure taxes meant pulling in well over 100 grand a month. The guy could not wrap his head around it. How does someone pulling 6 figures a month ride around on a beat-up scooter? That is the funny thing about money. When you are broke, a scooter makes you look poor, but when you are rich, it suddenly becomes humble and low-key. Chen Hao just stood there stewing in complete psychological defeat. Li Jiahui handed me the printed voucher with a radiant smile, offering special value-added services and her personal WeChat. Chen Hao cursed under his breath, watching her use official tax services as an excuse to hit on me. Qin Lin, what are you doing here? A familiar voice called out, and Ma Qin came running over with a bright smile. Seeing my wife made me want to pull her in and kiss her right there, but the government hall held me back. Sensing immediate competition, Li Jiahui peeked through the glass and asked Ma Qin if she knew me. That is someone else's husband, Chen Hao chimed in from the side, tossing the bomb with a deadpan face. Li Jiahui froze, instantly deflating in pure disappointment that a top-tier catch had already been locked down. Looking between Qin Lin and Chen Hao, she finally understood why Ma Qin never gave Chen Hao the time of day, tossing him a look of sheer contempt. Chen Hao caught her disgusted glance and felt his face burn with fresh humiliation. I smiled at Ma Qin and told her I had just filed my shop taxes and came down to pay the bill. Ma Qin looked at me with wide eyes, knowing our little shop had never even come close to qualifying for taxes before. She remembered I had started doing wholesale produce and eagerly took the receipt, dying to see how the business was doing. Her jaw dropped the second she saw the 24,000 yuan tax total, realizing I cleared 6 figures this month. She checked the slip twice to make sure she was not dreaming, then grabbed my wrist and dragged me straight outside to the plaza steps. Are you really making this much from wholesale? She asked, looking up at me like she had just seen a miracle. I pulled her close by the waist and promised to keep pushing so I could bring her home officially as soon as possible. That hit her right in the heart. She stood on her tiptoes and planted a firm kiss right on my cheek. She blushed and whispered that she had overtime tonight, plus her parents were out of town so she did not have to go home. I immediately offered to book a hotel room, earning a sharp, playful pinch to my ribs. She put on a haughty little pout, flipped her hair, and strutted back inside to finish her shift. When I went back inside to set up online payments, Li Jiahui was suddenly cold as ice, completely ditching her warm routine. I rode off on my scooter feeling on top of the world, stopping at a pharmacy to buy the most expensive box of protection so we would not cause any family panic. The moment I got back to the shop, a brand new storyline prompt popped up right across my mental game screen. A tiny figure named Dwarf Ani appeared from deep in the forest, introducing himself and his 7 companions who just settled outside Mineral Town. He noticed me fishing by the river these past few days and challenged me to a fishing minigame with a mystery prize on the line. I accepted the challenge, and the screen blacked out for a split second before loading a fast-paced 1-minute fishing duel. Controlling the game with pure thought turned manual reaction speed into 0 latency, letting me hook every fish on sight and run away with the win. Ani gave props where they were due, admitting total defeat and handing over a special water tank straight from the wild river. The system pinged right on cue, confirming I had just scored an ultra-rare wild ornamental albino yellow tiger. I grew up around river carp and catfish, but ornamental fish were a total mystery to me. Whenever I saw someone fussing over a tank of fancy fish, my first instinct was to wonder if they tasted better steamed or stir-fried. As far as I was concerned, dropping serious cash on swimming decorations was just paying a voluntary stupidity tax. But since this thing came straight from a magical dwarf, I pulled out my phone to look up what an albino yellow tiger actually was. It turned out to be an ultra-rare mutant Indonesian tiger fish, and wild ones were practically impossible to find without human tampering. Then I scrolled down to the market price and nearly dropped my phone. 600,000 yuan, the exact price tag of a top-tier BMW 5 Series. For a normal guy like me, imagining a single fish matching the price of a luxury sedan was completely wild. The craziest part was the demand. Rich collectors with money to burn would snatch one up the second it hit the market. I logged back into the game to check the specimen Ani gave me, still struggling to believe a fish could be worth a small fortune. The system scan popped up, quality 2 wild albino yellow tiger, boosting visual appeal, taste, deliciousness, and desire to buy by +2. It really did have cooking buffs, but between eating a culinary masterpiece and pocketing 600 grand, I was taking the cash every single time. The only real roadblock was finding a buyer, because finding private collectors who throw around 6 figures is not something you do on regular social media. I pulled the water container into reality, ordered a DD ride, and carefully carried the fish out to the curb. "Please take it easy over the bumps," I told the driver, "because we really do not want to stress this fish out." The driver rolled his eyes in the mirror, clearly thinking I was some weird eccentric who cared way too much about a regular goldfish. The car dropped me off in front of Huimai Ornamental Fish, the only dedicated aquarium shop in the entire county. Inside, the shopkeeper was whistling a tune while tenderly feeding pellets to a tank of exotic fish, treating them with more affection than most people show their families. "Is the boss in?" I called out, carrying the glass container through the doorway. The owner turned around, locked eyes on my container, and practically jumped out of his skin shouting that it was a wild, top-grade albino yellow tiger. He started pitching custom-built aquariums and specialty food, completely convinced I was an eccentric collector looking to pamper my new prize. I cut him off right there and told him I was looking to sell, asking if he had the right connections. His eyes went wide, and he introduced himself as Lin Xing, offering to broker the deal for a standard 2% cut, beat selling 50 yuan goldfish all day long. I agreed without hesitation, because 2% was nothing compared to the headache of hunting down private buyers myself. Lin Xing printed a formal broker agreement on the spot, and we both signed on the dotted line. He spent the next 20 minutes inspecting the scales, filming high-definition video clips, and checking for any tracking microchips. For an entire hour, the guy worked the phones, blasting video previews into high-end collector group chats. 3 buyers threw down bids, but an aquarium owner topped them all at 650,000. I told him to lock it in, and the buyer hopped straight in his car for the 2-hour drive out to our county. 2 hours later, a massive black Rolls-Royce pulled up right outside the shop door. A wealthy-looking guy near 40 pushed through the door and immediately demanded to see the fish. Lin Xing pointed straight to the table and introduced me as the owner. Boss Zhuang asked for permission to inspect it, leaning in close with laser-focused eyes. He started drooling over its scales and curves, murmuring praise like a man who just met the love of his life. I just sat there baffled, because to me, it was really just a pretty fish in a glass jar. He snapped upright and blurted out that he would take it on the spot, eager to lock the deal down before anyone else could blink. That was the desire to buy +2 stat doing its magic. He was completely hooked and terrified of missing out. I agreed without missing a beat, still amused that a buyer dropping 650 grand was sweating harder than the seller. Boss Zhuang strutted out with the tank hugged against his chest, marching straight to his Rolls-Royce like he had just conquered the world. My phone buzzed in my pocket with a heavy, long vibration, and 50,000 yuan deposited clean, pushing my total balance past 1. Just like that, in a single afternoon, I was officially a millionaire. 1,000,000 yuan meant everything, wiping out my family debts, securing a down payment on a house, and officially bringing watching home. Ambitious people would probably use that million to chase 9 figures, but I just wanted to be debt-free and prove watching never misjudged me. The second the 650 cleared, I sent Lin Xing his 13,000 yuan broker commission. Lin Xing took the money with a wide grin, reminding me to declare the sale under agricultural product taxes within 30 days. He told me a horror story about some guy who forgot to declare a 500,000 yuan fish, got audited, slapped with double fines, and thrown in jail. I thanked him for the heads up. With a magical secret in my pocket, staying strictly tax compliant was my #1 survival rule. I got back to the shop and logged straight onto the tax bureau portal to file the declaration. Special agricultural transactions carried a 9% rate plus 3% VAT, slapping me with a 78,000 yuan tax bill on the spot. That dropped my fresh million yuan balance down to 953,000, but clean money was worth every penny. My strawberries and okra ripened, and delivering them to RT Mart brought in another 42,390 yuan. I handed manager Qin 10 pounds of quality 2 okra for 4 grand cash, and he practically begged me to dump every batch on his desk. Daily revenue hit 46,390, pushing my bank card right back over the 1 million yuan mark. After dinner, I showered, threw on clean clothes, styled my hair, and rode my scooter to the tax bureau to pick up Moching. Overtime staff filtered out of the lobby, and Chen Hao walked straight past me with a deadpan face, slinking into his Audi without a word. Moching walked out with Li Jiawei, spotted me from the stairs, and ran over to hop onto the back of my scooter with a beaming smile. Li Jiawei stood on the stairs watching us take off, sighing with pure romantic envy at the sight of a low-key millionaire chauffeuring his wife on an electric scooter. We pulled up to the hotel, and while walking down the hall, I dangled the sweet key and bragged about the luxury bathtub waiting inside. Moching turned crimson right in the corridor, shooting me an embarrassed glare and slapping my waist to shut me up. I swiped the keycard, and the second the door clicked open, Moching tossed her purse on the table and darted for the bathroom with me right on her heels. An hour later, Moching sat on the bed wrapped in a white bath towel sorting through a stack of folders, so I asked why office paperwork followed us here. She told me a corrupt township enterprise had collapsed, and the bureau was cataloging their seized property for a court-ordered asset auction. Her uncle, a section chief in the bureau, had handed her the auction files to give her a clean boost on her work record. I flipped through the list of confiscated cars and houses until one resort caught my eye, Fuhai Mountain Villa. It was the exact same farmhouse resort where those crooked officials got caught bragging on viral video before getting hauled off in handcuffs. The property sprawled across 500 acres with fish ponds and reservoir rights, though most of the surrounding land was completely neglected wasteland. Because it was a judicial liquidation in a small county, the opening bid for the lease transfer was set at a dirt cheap 600,000 yuan. I asked Moching if taking over the mountain villa would drag along legal headaches or angry family members looking for a fight. With my degree in tourism management, I knew I could combine this 500-acre estate with my game farm and build an empire that crushed ordinary wholesale. Debt payments and buying a house could wait a little longer, because a golden business opportunity like this does not knock twice. Moching put my mind at ease, promising the resort had 0 legal disputes and failed only because its corrupt managers cared about banquets instead of business. The next morning, I checked out with Moching, took her home to change, and dropped her off at the bureau before heading back to the shop. Within a day, Fuhai Mountain Villa went live on the county judicial auction portal, starting at 600,000 with maximum lease renewal protections attached. A prize like that was bound to draw sharks, so I locked in my registration and got ready for a bidding war. 7 days of non-stop strawberry and okra deliveries brought in another 270,000 yuan, pushing my total war chest past 1.28 million. The auction notice popped up right at sunrise, so I wired the mandatory 60,000 yuan deposit to secure my bidding seat for 2 o'clock. I dove back into the game to harvest the morning crops, but the second the seeds hit the dirt, a golden flash lit up the whole field. The system pinged with a major level up, unlocking brand new wasteland clearing and letting me upgrade existing plots straight to level 3. I pulled up the mental game interface right away to see what the level up brought. The notification gave me permission to clear 6 fresh level 1 plots and upgrade a single plot straight to level 3. Level 3 soil was a game changer, built specifically for higher tier cash crops that paid serious money. Upgrading required in-game gold coins, but since I extracted every single harvest into the real world, my virtual pockets were completely dry. Luckily, I still had a massive stockpile of live fish swimming in game storage. I dumped all the standard fish into the game shop for quick cash, making sure to keep every single giant quality 2 prize locked down. Selling the batch brought in a solid stack of game currency, but it still fell short of what level 3 soil demanded. Higher tier land was an expensive investment, scaling up in cost with every single rank. I took out my virtual tools and sent my avatar to clear the 6 newly unlocked plots. Weeding the brush, smashing boulders, and chopping old stumps took time, but I tilled all 6 plots into clean, dark loam. I scattered fresh okra seeds across the new plots and watered every row until the dirt glistened. None of these 6 plots were going to real-world markets. Every single pod was getting sold directly to the game system to fund my soil upgrades. Going forward, I had to keep a dedicated portion of my fields reserved for in-game currency so my character progression never stalled. Right at 2 o'clock, my phone buzzed with an alert that the court asset auction was live. Modern courts have moved everything online, trading crowded auction halls for digital bidding rooms. I logged into the judicial auction platform, and the system assigned me my official bidder ID. The feed started rolling as confiscated luxury cars, villas, and commercial assets from the corruption probe went under the digital hammer. Then Fuhai Mountain Villa hit the block with an opening bid of 600,000 yuan. 3 bidders immediately started playing tug-of-war, nudging the price up 10 grand at a time until it hit 700,000. Tossing out 10 grand at a time smelled like penny-pinching buyers who had tight budgets and hoped everyone else would quit. With a total war chest of 1.28 million, playing their 10,000 yuan game would just turn into an endless grind. I thought about dropping a sudden 100,000 bump to scare the room and test their nerve. Before I could even touch the keyboard, a 4th bidder cut in line and slammed down 800,000. That sudden 100 grand spike worked like a charm, freezing the other 3 bidders dead in their tracks. Now I was stuck in a duel against someone with real aggression and an unknown budget. I decided to stop playing games and went all in, prepared to let it go if this guy could beat my ceiling. I punched in 1.2 million yuan, instantly doubling the opening price to see who flinched first. Across town, 3 young tourism planners were high-fiving by their monitors, convinced their 800,000 bid had won the day. They had pooled their savings after quitting city tourism jobs, betting everything on turning Fuhai Mountain Villa into an agritourism goldmine. Then their screen refreshed with bidder Q43 dropping 1.2 million, and the room went completely dead. The guys threw their hands up, cursing out this maniac who just dropped an extra 400 grand like it was pocket change. They scrambled over their bank books, arguing whether to throw in another bid before admitting 1.2 million blew their budget out of the water. With heavy sighs, they gave up on the mountain villa and decided to wait for their next shot. The timer hit 0, and the system officially declared bidder Q43 the winning owner of Fuhai Mountain Villa. I let out a massive breath. My 1.2 million bluff had held the line and won the prize. I did not waste a second, heading straight to the county courthouse to wire the 1.2 million and sign the legal transfer. The court clerk handed over the official ruling confirmation letter and stamped receipt, explaining the multi-department review would take a few days. Since this was a direct tax bureau recovery auction, no local official was going to drag their feet and risk government credibility. My strawberry and okra harvest hit RT-Mart, pulling in fresh revenue that lifted my bank balance back over 120. I hopped on my electric scooter and rode over to the tax bureau to pick up Moching and celebrate the mountain villa win. Moching walked down the steps beaming from ear to ear, so I asked what had her smiling so wide. She laughed and told me she was getting a fat bonus because the bureau court auction brought in way more cash than expected. Some crazy tycoon, she giggled, had doubled the starting bid on Fuhai Mountain Villa right up to 1.2 million. Her entire office was laughing about some foolish spendthrift with more money than brains getting taken for a ride. I sat there in dead silence, staring straight ahead as I realized my own wife was clowning me. I swallowed my confession right there on the spot. If I told her now, she would never let me hear the end of it, so I decided to keep quiet until I turned that resort into a massive hit. Still, she mused aloud that anyone spending that much had to be serious, suggesting that blanketing all that barren land with a vibrant sea of bougainvillea flowers would pull in crowds from across the province. I burned every single word into my memory. A sea of bougainvillea flowers was officially top priority, and I was going to make it happen. Over the next 3 days, I knocked out the court paperwork while the remaining inter-department approvals queued up for another 3-day review. Getting a foreclosed property cleared in under a week was practically supersonic compared to the months of red tape most buyers deal with. Those 3 days brought in over 116,000 yuan, and between fishing and selling virtual okra, I finally had enough game coins to upgrade my level 3 soil. I opened the game map and sent my avatar straight to the Mineral Town seed shop. The shop catalog had completely updated, unlocking an exclusive tier of level 3 seeds. I scrolled through luxury specialty crops, multicore winged beans, yellow flesh dried greens, green kiwi fruit, and dandung milk strawberries. These were high-end market staples, the kind of luxury produce that pulls tens or hundreds of yuan per kilo in upscale grocery stores. Then a bright golden star caught my eye, sitting beside a seed packet that stood out from the rest. The tooltip explained that star icons mark mysterious, ultra-rare seeds that only pop up in the shop by pure random chance. I clicked on the listing, Star Seedless Watermelon, guaranteed quality to right out of the packet. The description promised rich, incredible flavor, 0 seasonal limits, and an ultra-short growth cycle. Guaranteed quality 2 crops with no off-season was pure gold, basically letting me print summer cash all winter long. My mind raced with possibilities, realizing what a monster asset these seeds would be once my farm expanded. I checked the rest of the shop and noticed high-end ornamental seedlings sitting in the level 3 nursery section. A 7-colored symbiotic bougainvillea seedling popped up, instantly reminding me of Maching's dream for a mountain flower sea. I pulled out my phone and searched online, finding out that multicolored bougainvillea was actually a high-end luxury grafted variety. Symbiosis meant grafting branches from multiple varieties onto a single rootstock, creating one stunning plant that blazed with several different flower colors at the same time. The rules of the market were straightforward. The more colors blooming off a single trunk, the higher the price tag jumped. Online listings confirmed the madness. A mature 3-color plant went for at least 3,000 yuan, while 5-color specimens easily broke 5,000. Color symbiosis was practically non-existent in the real world, because grafting that many varieties onto one living stem is a botanical nightmare. I had been planning to get Moching flowers anyway, and bringing her an impossible 7-colored bouquet was going to blow her away. Turning all that neglected acreage at the mountain villa into a sprawling sea of bougainvillea was the smartest play on the board. Standard single-color flower gardens already pull huge crowds, so a 7-colored spectacle backed by magical system buffs would completely dominate the region. There was not a single bougainvillea park anywhere in Yuqing or neighboring Shaoqing, leaving the entire regional market wide open for the taking. Mature 7-color shrubs planted across the slopes would turn the villa into an instant landmark, giving people a reason to travel from hours away. Down south, bougainvilleas usually hit peak bloom by mid-November, giving me roughly 2 months to get everything planted before prime season arrived. At 50 yuan a ticket, a modest crowd of 100 or 200 visitors a day would generate 5 to 10 grand in pure daily gate revenue. Why stop at gate tickets? I could open an all-natural produce market right inside the resort, and sell my game crops straight to visiting tourists. The crops tasted better than anything on earth, so tourists would clean out the shelves on site, letting me keep every single cent of the retail profit. I locked in the decision and clicked purchase on the 7-colored ornamental bougainvillea seedlings in the game shop. Each group yielded 20 to 30 mature shrubs with a 3-day maturation clock. I took the seedlings straight to my newly upgraded level 3 plot and planted every single root. 3 days flew by as I finalized every legal document and court approval for the mountain villa. I picked up the new business license and health permits from the Industry and Commerce Bureau with a massive sigh of relief. Starting today, Fuhai Mountain Villa was officially history. I renamed the entire estate Qin Lin Mountain Villa. I could pretend the name sounded poetic, but honestly, it was just taking one character from my name and one from Maching's. 3 days of strawberry and okra runs brought in another 120 grand, pushing my bank account over 353,000 yuan. I packed the legal papers into my bag, hopped on my electric scooter, and rode out of the county toward the resort. The location was unbeatable, sitting less than 30 minutes away right where Shaoqing, the municipal city, and our county intersected. Even remote places like Dongnan Lake thrived on rural tourism, so having prime traffic like this ruined by corrupt management felt like a crime. Those clowns spent their days holding lavish feasts and bragging on video until the internet caught up with them. I had visited this place before, but pulling into the parking lot as the actual owner felt completely different. 500 acres was roughly 47 football fields, and walking through the main gate showed just how much of it was completely untamed. The main compound had a decent reception building, dorms, and semi-open dining pavilions fitted with outdoor barbecue pits. There was also a central commercial kitchen on site for visitors who preferred chef-cooked meals over doing it themselves. Outside, an overgrown vegetable garden sat waiting for visitors who wanted to pick their own produce. Right beside it was an aquaculture fish pond with 0 fish in sight, completely neglected. There were basic attractions like swings, a jungle adventure ropes course, and a grass sliding slope. Past the lodge stood 2 massive weather trees surrounded by stone rings, with fresh fertilizer scattered around the roots in a desperate attempt to save them. A wooden placard hanging on the fence identified them as 500-year-old ancient ginkgos. It reminded me of Emperor Li Shimon's famous 1,000-year-old ginkgo, except these two poor trees were basically on life support. The rest of the property was pure wasteland, especially the reservoir bank, which looked randomly fenced off without any real plan. With my tourism management background, I would rate the current setup barely passing. It desperately needed a signature centerpiece. Right on cue, a notification popped up on my mental game screen, announcing the 7-colored bougainvilleas were fully mature. I harvested the plot, sending 25 mature 7-color bougainvillea plants straight into the ranch storage courtyard. I bought another group of seedlings immediately, and replanted the level 3 soil. I stepped into a restroom stall in the lobby, locked the latch, and teleported physically into the game dimension. Walking into the storage courtyard, the sight of 25 blooming 7-colored shrubs lined up in full splendor took my breath away. Up close, each shrub towered over 2 meters tall with thick root balls bundled tightly in damp burlap and soil, primed for transplanting. I touched a flowering branch, pulling up the item stats to check its dimensions and buffs. The system stat list was absurd: color, visual appeal, attractiveness, mood boost, photogenic quality, and transplant success all buffed by +2. Flowers usually sleep by June, but year-round blooming shattered natural limits and turned this flower sea into an endless gold mine. The 7-colored bougainvillea was packed with buffs, boosting visual appeal, charm, and photo quality all at once. The +2 transplant survival rate was the real prize, making sure every single root took hold without dying. Building a flower sea at the mountain villa meant extracting these game plants and getting them into real dirt as fast as possible. I exited the game, planning to scout an empty corner of the villa to test some in a shrub. The second I pushed the door open, a girl in a white shirt and jeans jumped back and asked who I was. She had a baby face that made her look like a high school kid skipping class. "I am the owner here," I told her, "so why wouldn't I be here?" "But who are you?" Her eyes lit up in shock, asking if I was really the new boss and whether I was going to fire everyone. I had to ask if she actually worked here, still wondering if she was old enough to hold a job. She dropped her guard completely and jogged over, introducing herself as Gao Yao Yao, the ticket seller for the grass slide and jungle course. She pulled out her ID card on the spot, proving she was 19 and fresh out of vocational school. Relieved I was not dealing with child labor, I asked how many people were on the payroll before the shutdown. She was grounded, polite, and uncorrupted by big city vanity, making her a natural fit for hospitality. She rattled off the roster: a ticket seller, a security guard, a registrar, a cashier, and 4 cooks. 4 chefs for a mountain villa where guests cook their own barbecue. That made 0 sense. Gao Yao Yao explained that only Master Lin actually cooked, while the executive chef and 2 sous chefs were ghost staff who never set foot in the kitchen. The whole setup was a scam. The corrupt officials had stuffed their cronies onto the payroll as fake chefs just to siphon public money. I asked Gao Yao Yao if anyone on the old crew knew how to do carpentry and build timber structures. Master Lin could handle that too, she said. Besides working the kitchen stoves, he personally repaired every broken table and warped shelf on the property. I pressed further, asking if anyone had experience with landscaping, potting, and nursing plants back to health. She nodded immediately, revealing Master Lin took care of the vegetable patch, potted plants, and was still desperately trying to revive the 2 dying ancient ginkgos. I stood there completely floored. Master Lin was practically a one-man army doing the work of an entire department. I asked if she still had contact info for the rest of the old crew. She smiled and pulled up a lively staff group chat on WeChat, showing that everyone stayed in touch after the shutdown. I told her to ditch the ghost chefs and message the real workers, making sure Master Lin knew his job was waiting for him. Gao Yao Yao beamed, mentioning Master Lin would probably ask for help saving the ancient ginkgos before she fired off the message. Bringing back experienced staff meant I had reliable hands on site to supervise building fences, paving stone paths, and framing pavilions for the flower sea. A minute later, she looked up and confirmed everyone except the cashier was ready to report for duty tomorrow morning. I told her to take the rest of the day off, eager to get her out of the way so I could pull a bougainvillea plant from the game. But she smiled and mentioned she lived right in the staff dorms, offering to give me a full guided tour of the property. With Gao Yao Yao hanging around, extracting a game plant right under her nose was completely out of the question. I gave up on the secret test run and headed out to my scooter, determined to keep my magical game dimension hidden from the world. Back in the county, I stopped at a local sign workshop to commission a retro-carved wooden plaque to replace the old resort sign. Sitting back down at my shop counter on Market Street, I laid out the master plan for the Bougainvillea Sea of Flowers. Flower seas come in scattered and dense layouts, and while dense planting costs a fortune, the visual impact is on a whole different level. A proper 20-acre dense flower sea demanded cobblestone paths, swings, stone benches, viewing pavilions, and at least 10,000 bougainvillea shrubs. 10,000 level 3 7-colored shrubs was pure fantasy. At 25 plants every 3 days, that would take 600 days. Colored giants had to be the crown jewels, spaced out as central showstoppers while standard bougainvillea filled the surrounding fields. In 1 month, my level 3 plot could produce 250 massive 7-colored centerpieces, standing 2.5 meters tall with 2-meter crowns. I checked the Mineral Town seed shop and found standard multicolored bougainvillea seedlings available for level 2 soil. A quick internet search showed standard ornamental shrubs sold for around 400 yuan each, growing tens of centimeters high. With game system attribute buffs baked in, my level 2 flowers would easily blow standard 400 yuan market plants out of the water. The real bottleneck was game coins, because buying seeds for both plots demanded a massive daily stream of virtual cash. I pulled the plug on real-world strawberries, told Manager Chen we were out of stock, and converted all my level 2 land to flower production. The okra on my newly cleared plots kept selling straight to the in-game merchant, funding a steady daily supply of seeds. Level 2 plots produced 25 bougainvillea shrubs every single day, which would stack up to 4,500 plants in a month. That was still over 5,000 plants short of my 10,000 target for a full dense sea. Mixing in real-world nursery shrubs was the perfect cover to camouflage where all my magical plants were coming from. I searched local suppliers and found a municipal nursery selling standard bougainvilleas for just 30 yuan a pop. 5,000 plants would run 150 grand, and they only asked for a 20% down payment up front. I decided to double the order to 10,000 plants and expand the whole flower sea by 10 extra acres. A 30-acre flower sea that would cost any regular resort millions was only setting me back 300 grand. Best of all, no competitor in the world could replicate my 7-colored centerpiece shrubs or their magical system buffs. With the right marketing, this place would become the undisputed viral hotspot for the entire region. And once those crowds flooded through the gates, my game crops would sell out on-site at full retail price without giving middlemen a dime. The next morning, I opened my bedroom door to find Wakai already squatting on the rug, craning its neck for chin scratches. My mother set down a steaming bowl of noodles and asked why I had been sneaking around and keeping the fruit shop closed. I told her wholesale profits had been good and that I just picked up a mountain villa project, warning her I would be even busier. She promised total support no matter what I did, reminding me that the fruit shop would always be our safety net if things went sideways. She assumed it was just a 30 grand farmhouse lease, secretly stressing over how fast rural resorts usually go broke around here. I told her to focus entirely on resting and recovering, knowing full well I was going to turn that resort into a massive success. I bolted out the front door the second I grabbed my keys, refusing to get left behind. I dropped off the morning okra at RT Mart and killed time until the afternoon, waiting for the 6 level 2 bougainvillea plots to mature. Right on schedule, the game interface pinged to confirm all 6 plots were ripe in 6 distinct, brilliant colors. I swung the harvest tool and pulled 153 mature quality 1 shrubs straight out of the dirt. I rushed back to the Mineral Town seed shop, bought another batch of seedling groups, and replanted all 6 plots on the double. I drove my beat-up delivery truck over to the rented warehouse, hopped out, and told Wankai to stand guard at the door. Wankai barked twice and immediately began pacing back and forth like a seasoned sentry on patrol. I rolled the heavy metal door shut, locked it from the inside, and stepped straight into the game dimension. The storage yard was a sight to behold, 25 7-colored giants standing proud alongside 153 vibrant shrubs, like an ocean of living color. I reached down and touched a bright yellow shrub, pulling up its exact measurements, 60 centimeters high, 70 centimeters wide, and a 4 centimeter trunk. The stat card flashed quality 1, packing +1 buffs across color, visual appeal, charm, mood boost, photogenic quality, transplant survival, and year-round blooming. It could not match the 7-colored giants, but blooming 12 straight months gave it an unfair advantage over anything grown in real dirt. I went back and forth between worlds, hauling all 178 shrubs out of the game and lining them across the warehouse floor. Looking at the massive root balls and those 2.5-meter trees, there was zero chance my beat-up little pickup was moving this forest alone. I pulled out my phone and dialed a specialized freight team from the county logistics park. They charged 85 yuan base plus 5 yuan per kilometer, so I wired a quick deposit and sent our location pin. A heavy flatbed convoy rolled up outside, squeezing into the tight forecourt, so they had to load the trucks one by one. Zhao Liyuan walked into the warehouse and stopped dead in his tracks, gasping at the vibrant sea of flowers. He had seen the famous bougainvillea park in Xiamen, but he swore these flowers looked 10 times more breathtaking. He asked if this was for the mountain villa and pulled out his phone, stunned by how gorgeous the flowers looked through his camera lens. I confirmed the project with a nod, and he promised right there to bring his wife the day we opened the gates. His crew got to work, using hydraulic dollies and straps to carefully hoist the heavy root balls onto the truck beds. Zhao Liyuan lit a cigarette and asked if those massive multicolored trees cost an arm and a leg. 3 color plants run 3 grand and 5 colors hit 5 grand, I told him, so 7 colored ones are basically priceless. Zhao Liyuan choked hard on his smoke, hacking and coughing before frantically shouting at his crew to treat every single branch like fragile porcelain. A 5 grand plant was terrifying enough, but breaking a priceless 7-colored centerpiece would bankrupt his entire shipping fee 10 times over. The crew strapped down all 178 shrubs, and the heavy flatbed convoy rolled out in formation toward the mountain villa. I rode alongside the fleet in high spirits, already picturing how breathtaking the 30-acre flower sea would look on those rolling slopes. After paying the nursery deposit, I checked my bank card and realized I finally had enough clean cash to wipe out all my family debts. The freight convoy pulled through the front gates of Qin Lin Mountain Villa. Narrow dirt paths inside meant the heavy trucks had to stage right in the parking lot, and Wankai bounded off the footrest, sticking right to my heels. Zhao Liyuan stepped down from the cab, asking if we were unloading right on the asphalt. Unload here, I told him, since this is the only spot wide enough to stage everything. Zhao Liyuan got his crew moving under our pre-signed unloading agreement, lowering the hydraulic lifts. I strolled into the resort grounds while Wankai trotted along, barking excitedly at every single tree. This whole place is your kingdom now, boy, I laughed. Pretty nice. The dog took my words literally, sprinting from bush to lift its leg and claim every corner. I watched in deadpan disbelief. The little guy was actually marking out a 500-acre estate. Inside the lobby, a small group of former employees was waiting nervously by the counter. In a small county where average pay sat around 3 grand, nobody wanted to lose a steady paycheck, Gao Yaoyao announced, waving me over the second I walked in. The staff stared in surprise, taking in a boss who looked barely out of college with a scruffy stray at his heels. Gao Yaoyao jogged over with a bright bow, greeting me before I could even take another step. Which one of you is Master Lin? I asked Gao Yaoyao, scanning the small group. Gao Yaoyao turned and waved over a wiry, dark-skinned man in his 50s with thick calloused hands. Before I could even say hello, the veteran handyman blurted out his only condition. I had to let him save the 2 dying ginkgo trees. Most workers negotiate for higher pay, so hearing someone beg for 2 dead trees caught me completely off guard. Gao Yaoyao stepped in to explain that Master Lin's family had taken refuge under those very ginkgos during hard times, and his grandfather had passed away beneath their boughs. That was why he took every grueling odd job at the resort, just to stay close and keep those 500-year-old giants alive. I agreed on the spot, telling him the trees were safe and inviting him to check out our first big project. A man who carries that kind of old-school loyalty in his bones is someone you can trust with your life. I led Master Lin outside, and the rest of the crew tagged along to see what the commotion was about. We walked into the parking lot just as Zhao Liyuan's team unloaded the first row of blooming shrubs onto the asphalt. Gao Yaoyao gasped in delight, running over to stare at the explosion of colors like a kid in a candy store. The rest of the crew crowded around the flatbeds, completely mesmerized by the vibrant blossoms. Master Lin circled a towering multicolored tree with reverence, asking if I was planning to build an entire mountain flower sea. I told him we were planting 15,000 shrubs across 30 acres, and I wanted him in charge of the whole operation. Master Lin nearly had a stroke on the spot, shouting that planting 15,000 shrubs by hand would turn him into a corpse. I laughed and told him to calm down, explaining that hired construction teams would handle the heavy digging while he just supervised. I added that 2 full-time gardeners would be brought on permanently once the flower sea was built to take care of daily watering, Master Lin gave a firm nod, swearing to watch the contractors like a hawk and keep every seedling safe. With the 178 shrubs safely staged, I settled the freight bill and booked Zhao Li Yuan for daily delivery runs over the next month. Freight work was brutally slow lately, so Zhao Li Yuan jumped at the guarantee business without asking questions. He probably wondered why I paid him to ship plants from a local warehouse instead of sending them straight to the resort, but he chalked it up to rich guy quirks. His own boss bought a secret second home just to sleep alone on fake business trips, so nothing rich people did could shock him anymore. I sat down with the rest of the returning crew for quick interviews, finding them honest and ready to work. Having zero HR experience, I dug up the resort old contract templates to print clean copies for tomorrow morning. Master Lin and I hiked across the 500-acre estate, hunting for the perfect 30-acre plot to build our landmark. After an hour of scouting, we picked the broad, gentle field sitting directly north of the main reception lodge. Creating a seamless ocean of flowers required level ground, because steep drops would shatter the visual flow. I rode back into the county and signed a contract with Yuqing's top-rated construction and landscaping firm. They provided veteran planters and masonry builders at 400 yuan a day per man. The deposit cleared, and their survey team rushed straight to the resort, mapping coordinates until sunset. Dusk rolled in. I posted our old security guard, Chen Dabai, on overnight watch to guard the valuable plants in the lot. With the staging locked down, I made a hard decision to settle all our family debts before word about the mountain villa spread. Building a massive resort, while owing people money, was a recipe for ugly gossip and bitter resentment. Our creditors were old village elders who opened their wallets out of pure kindness when my family was on its knees. Waiting until after the resort took off to pay them back would only make people feel taken for granted. I pulled out my debt notebook, tallying 330,000 yuan owed across several village uncles. I dialed Uncle Urgent first, inviting him over to our house tonight so I could pay back my late father's loan in full. I worked through the rest of the list, calling every single creditor until all the village elders were invited. Hosting them at our house let my mother see the debt cleared with her own eyes right before my father's memorial altar. I stopped by the warehouse and pulled heavy wild fish from the game into a bucket, prepping a solid gift for each uncle. I drove home with the fish splashing in the back, ready to show our elders real gratitude for their patience. Dinner was on the table when I walked in, and my mother asked how things were moving along with the farm stay. Everything is getting back on track, I told her, and business is going to keep me moving. She reminded me not to get so caught up in work that I neglected watching, calling her a girl in a million. Deep down, she was terrified that a treasure of a girl like Maching would slip away to some wealthy suitor. She blamed herself for our mountain of debt, terrified that without a car or a house, Maching's parents would never let their daughter marry into our family. My mother sighed and reminded me to invite her on opening day so she could help greet guests at the door. How could I let my sick mom work the floor? I shut that idea down immediately. She huffed that her health was fine and that celebrating my new business would bring her more joy than medicine ever could. I promised to wash the dishes, smiling at the simple blessing of having a mom around. Lin Fen watched me scrub the pans, sighing quietly over how sensible I had always been despite our family dragging me down. I finished cleaning the counter and told my mom that Uncle Urgent and the other village elders were heading over. The doorbell rang, and my mother opened the door with a sinking heart, staring nervously at Uncle Urgent on the landing. He had lent us 30 grand for my father's cancer treatment, and no matter how bitter we were, our conscience demanded we welcome him inside. Uncle Dalin pulled up right behind him, chatting about his snack shop renovation as they walked into the hallway. A whole line of village elders filed through the door, packing our modest entryway to the brim. My mother sighed under her breath, forcing a polite smile as she poured hot tea for every creditor in the room. Wankai got spooked by the loud crowd and darted straight into the kitchen to hide behind my legs. I stepped out of the kitchen with Wankai and gave Uncle Urgent, Uncle Dalin, and the elders a proper greeting. I was truly grateful to these men. When my father was dying of cancer, they opened their savings knowing my widowed mother might never pay them back. In the whole year since I graduated, not a single one of them had ever knocked on our door to demand a dime. That kind of loyalty is extinct in my generation, swallowed up by endless rat races and hollow social games. Little Lin really made something of himself, Uncle Urgent said with a grin, calling me more capable than any kid in the village. Uncle Dalin chimed in, saying he would sleep easy if his own slacker son had even half of my good sense. Hearing the praise made my mother beam, but her smile faded just as fast beneath the weight of our family misfortunes. Uncle Urjin reached into his shirt pocket and placed his 30,000 yuan debt note flat on the table. Uncle Dalin and the rest of the elders followed, dropping their own paper slips until the coffee table was covered in red ink. I sat down next to my mother, took her trembling hand, and told everyone I was settling the entire bill tonight. My mom stared at me in disbelief while the elders scrambled to pull out their phones, asking if I was serious. I matched each IOU to the right name, typing the sums directly into my mobile banking app. More than 300,000 yuan vanished in seconds, gutting my bank balance, but the weight off my chest was worth every penny. Phone after phone chimed across the room, and the elders broke into huge, relieved grins as their bank balances jumped. They turned to look at my mother with pure envy, amazed that a kid could pay off a mountain of debt with zero help from his parents. My mom felt those admiring gazes in her bones, her eyes welling up with a storm of pride and old grief. The uncles did not linger, piling on praise for a few more minutes before standing up to head out. I walked them downstairs to my vehicle, pulling back the canvas cover to show off tubs full of thrashing wild fish. I scooped out a massive, splashing wild carp for each of the elders, handing them over as a genuine thank you for sticking by us. Wild fish this size were pure luxury in the markets, and the uncles could barely contain their grins as they walked off into the night. I walked back upstairs with a fistful of return debt slips, feeling lighter than air. Standing before my late father's memorial portrait, I struck a match and set every single IOU on fire. The paper curled into black ash, and the crushing suffocation of the past year finally went up in smoke. Lin Fen rushed over in a panic, begging me to tell her where I found 300 grand and pleading that I had not broken the law. I fed her my cover story, claiming I reeled in a rare wild albino yellow tiger that an eccentric billionaire bought for 600,000. I explained how I rolled that cash into wholesale watermelons, leased a mountain villa, and used the profits to pay off our debts. She looked at me like I had grown a second head, refusing to believe a single fish could sell for more than a house. I pulled out my phone and held up the official tax bureau receipt, proving I paid 78 grand in legal taxes on the sale. Seeing the government tax stamp broke her doubts, and she started sobbing tears of relief, thanking my dad and heaven for looking out for us. She finally put the pieces together, realizing Qin Lin Mountain Villa was a serious resort rather than some 30 grand farmhouse lease. She dropped another bomb, mentioning Maching had come by and noticed I was keeping the whole resort under wraps. My mom ordered me to come clean immediately, terrified that some wealthy suitor in the county would sweep her away while I stayed silent. She declared to the ceiling that Zhao Maching was the only daughter-in-law she would ever accept in this house. I sat there stunned, caught between my mother's panic and my secret plan to surprise Moching with an entire sea of flowers. I told my mother I wanted to surprise Moching once the mountain villa was completely finished, so she had to keep it a secret. She shook her head with a dry chuckle, teasing that young people these days love turning everything into a grand romantic game. That night, with our debts wiped clean from my shoulders, I collapsed into bed and slept like a rock. Early the next morning, I delivered fresh okra to our T-Mart, printed our new employment contracts, and rode straight to the resort. Pulling into the parking lot, I found our security guard Shindabi sitting outside a camping tent, yawning after pulling an all-night watch. The tent belonged to the resort inventory, normally pitched by adventurous couples eager to test their courage under the stars. The second he spotted my scooter, he scrambled to his feet and gave me a sharp greeting. "You worked hard," I told him, inviting him into the main lobby to sign his official contract before heading home to sleep. He nodded with a grateful grin, falling in step behind me as we walked into the lodge. I stepped through the front doors and told Gao Yao to assemble the whole crew so we could sign their paperwork. Her contract matched her old base pay of 3,500 yuan, plus healthy commissions on every grass slide and jungle tour ticket sold. Master Lin took the top salary of 6,000 yuan, earning every cent for juggling kitchen walks alongside carpentry and gardening duties. The rest of the crew earned solid local wages of 3 to 4 grand, complete with free staff meals and on-site dorm housing. I promised them this baseline pay was just the beginning, assuring everyone that growing the resort would unlock bigger salaries and management promotions. Having seen the stunning bougainvillea staged outside, the crew bought into the vision completely, buzzing with real excitement for what was coming. Holding the stack of signed contracts in my hands, it hit me that I was an actual business owner now with real employees on the payroll. Right on cue, the commercial landscaping and civil engineering team rolled onto the property with trucks full of tools and equipment. I handed over the blueprints I had drafted all night, detailing every pebble footpath, wooden garden swing, resting bench, and octagonal viewing pavilion. Leaning on my tourism management degree, I locked down the visual aesthetic and set strict price limits for every material bid. The crews broke ground immediately, clearing brush and grading the northern field into smooth terraces. That afternoon, my 6 level 2 plots yielded another 156 ordinary ornamental bougainvilleas in full bloom. I extracted every single plant into the warehouse and dialed Zhao Liyuan to roll his flatbeds out once again. Over the next 2 days, the resort crew settled into their daily rhythm while stone paths and fences took shape across the hillside. On the third morning, my mental screen chimed to announce the level 3 7-colored bougainvillea crop had matured once more. I harvested the plants, sowed new seeds into the mystic soil, and drove over to the warehouse to check the haul. I stepped into the ranch storage yard and froze, my jaw hitting the floor as one colossal shrub towered over the entire batch. It was an absolute showstopper, pulling my eyes toward it like a magnet the second I walked in. I reached out and tapped the trunk, pulling up its data, a quality 3 masterpiece. The spec sheet was monstrous, 4 meters tall, 3.5 meters wide, and a 36 centimeter trunk. Every single stat was buffed by +3, including a brand new attribute called ecological harmony. All 6 core stats were buffed by +3, and while I had no clue what ecological harmony did yet, it had to be something game-changing. Standing 4 meters tall, it was way too big to squeeze through the warehouse doorway, so I stepped outside, made sure the yard was empty, and pulled it directly into the open forecourt. When Zhao Liyuan rolled up with his trucks, he almost lost his mind at the sight of the 4-meter titan, shouting at his crew to treat it like a priceless relic. It took his entire crew half a day just to hoist that single tree onto a reinforced flatbed without snapping a branch. Up at the resort, our hired landscaping crew was already hard at work, planting shrubs one by one in a wide radial pattern across the northern slope. We placed the 7-colored giants dead center, ringed them with level 2 flowers, and framed the outer perimeter with standard nursery stock. To keep the edges from looking plain, we salted a few magical shrubs along the outer ring so visitors would catch flashes of brilliance the moment they stepped in. Qin was keeping watch over the staging area when a large commercial convoy rolled up to the front gate from the city highway. The trucks pulled to a stop outside the entrance, and Qin walked up to check their business. A middle-aged man hopped down from the cab, adjusting his glasses and asking if this was Mr. Qin's mountain villa. Qin confirmed the location and asked who they were and what they were delivering. The man introduced himself as Ma Ke, a lead instructor from the city horticultural base sent to deliver our 10,000 plant order and provide on-site planting advice. Sending an expert was standard perk for massive orders, since turning our resort into a hit would be the best free advertisement their nursery could ask for. Qin waved them in, pointing toward the main parking lot where Boss Qin ordered all deliveries to stage. Ma Ke hopped out of the truck, stepped into the parking lot, and froze in absolute disbelief at the 7-colored shrubs lined across the asphalt. Multicolored grafting is hard enough, but 5 colors is considered aristocratic, while mature, 2-meter shrubs boasting 7 distinct shades are basically unicorns. What truly broke his brain was how flawless the color transitions looked, radiating a soothing harmony that only a mythical grandmaster cultivator could achieve. Looking around at the dozens of top-grade shrubs sitting on the asphalt, Ma Ke knew right then that this flower sea was going to blow up the entire region. An engine rumbled from the gate, and his nursery assistants suddenly started screaming in wild astonishment. Rolling onto the lot was our 4-meter-tall floral titan, towering over the trucks and leaving every professional jaw on the pavement. Ma Ke stepped onto the asphalt and froze, his jaw dropping at the colossal 4-meter floral titan towering over the flatbed. He rushed forward with trembling hands, asking if this was a collector-grade old-growth tree. As an industry veteran, he knew a flawless 7-colored symbiosis on a tree this size was a genuine masterpiece. Major scenic parks across the country would gladly throw down over 200,000 yuan for this single specimen. The flower sea at our mountain villa was not just going to succeed, it was going to be a massive regional sensation. Compared to these marvels, the 10,000 shrubs from his nursery were basically background decoration. Over as Qin stepped forward to introduce the city instructor. We exchanged a firm handshake under the morning sun. Ma Ke couldn't help asking how much it cost, guessing that even 200 grand could barely buy a tree like this. A friend gave me a discount, I replied with an easy shrug. I had no idea quality 3 specimens counted as elite collector-grade old growth. I remembered a news story about an old umbrella-shaped bicolor tree in Shiguang listed for 300,000 yuan. With year-round blooming and a stack of +3 buffs, this tree was worth far more than 200 grand. Humbled by our inventory, Maka kept his ego in check and quietly got to work guiding the planting. He delivered the first 3,000 nursery shrubs in mixed colors, ready for phased transplanting. I called Master Lin over to rework our layout, making sure this 4-meter titan took center stage in the flower sea. Stunned by the 6-figure price tag, Qin ran up and urged me to hire more guards before someone tried to steal our trees. I promised to handle it, knowing one guard was never going to be enough for a multi-million yuan flower sea. Master Lin brought his crew over, and the whole team stood frozen in awe before figuring out how to move the beast. It took half a day of sweating and shouting to hoist the titan and seed its massive root ball into the center of the field. Gao Yaoyao and the girls crowded around the new centerpiece, swearing they had never seen anything so beautiful in their lives. Gao Yaoyao sprinted over the moment I arrived, pulling my arm to go check on yesterday's tree. I walked up to the tree and stopped dead. Swarms of butterflies danced through the air, birds sang from the branches, and 2 squirrels peeked from the leaves. Flowers naturally draw butterflies, but wild birds and squirrels hanging out in broad daylight was completely unnatural. Gao Yaoyao stepped right under the boughs, and the squirrels stayed perched, tilting their heads to watch her like friendly pets. Wild critters always bolt when a person walks up, making this calm standoff feel like something out of a fantasy novel. It clicked immediately. This was the work of ecological harmony +3, turning the tree into a living nature magnet. I told Gao Yaoyao to put up signs banning anyone from harming the animals, turning this harmony into our ultimate tourist magnet. We locked the gates to outside visitors and threw the entire resort into full-blown construction mode. Over the month, I extracted 2 more quality 3 titans from the game, planting all 3 in the center behind a protective wooden fence. Swarms of butterflies, singing birds, and darting squirrels turned the central grove into an enchanting fairy tale sanctuary. Time flew as October rolled in, and I wrapped up my daily okra harvest in the cool autumn twilight. I dropped the 24 plots of okra off at our T-Mart, handing Manager Chen his 5-kilo batch of quality 2 goods under the table. Okra's sales brought in over 650 grand, leaving a cool 139,000 after clearing taxes, nursery bills, and builder fees. The 30-acre bougainvillea sea of flowers was completely finished, primed for our grand resort opening. I drove to the warehouse, grabbed my buckets, and entered the game where over 1,000 wild fish teemed in the pool. I hauled dozens of heavy wild fish into my tubs, including 6 monster river beasts destined for our resort pond. Rolling up to the entrance, our new carved wooden sign hung proud, Qin Lin Mountain Villa. Looking past the gates at that 30-acre floral ocean filled me with unshakable entrepreneurial pride. Right beside the main hall, carpenters were framing a retro timber sales center for our organic produce. Selling our game crops straight to visiting tourists at full retail value meant 0 middlemen and total profit. I pulled up to the reception hall, where Gao Yaoyao was leading 4 newly hired girls in custom blue resort uniforms. The new recruits were assigned to ride tickets, flower sea admissions, and front desk concierge. Gao Yaoyao had earned a promotion to supervisor, buzzing with boundless energy after 1,000 yuan salary bump. Qin marched over with 2 uniformed security guards, snapping to attention and asking for our next orders. We reinforced the grounds with surveillance cameras across every corner, backed by dedicated CCTV operators and veteran night patrol squads. Qin had earned his promotion to security captain, standing tall with a well-deserved 1,000 yuan raise. Between kitchen helpers, cashiers, groundskeepers, and front desk concierges, our mountain villa now commanded a full army of nearly 20 staff. I pointed at the metal tubs in the back of my truck and told Qin to dump the fish straight into the resort pond. The previous owners used to rent fishing rods to guests, and charge them by weight to grill their catch on the spot. When I bought the farm at auction, the pond was bone dry, so stocking it with prize wild fish was an obvious selling point. Qin hopped into the truck bed, directing 2 junior guards to hoist the heavy water tubs onto the pavement. A guard pulled back the wet canvas and shouted, his eyes popping at the massive fish thrashing inside. Another guard yelled that the biggest one easily topped 60 pounds, and there were several more just like it. Master Lin walked out in his white chef coat, took one look into the tub, and asked if these monsters were genuine wild stock. You have a sharp eye, Master Lin, I chuckled. He shook his head in awe, saying beasts this big ran 2 grand each and asking if I dropped a small fortune to land them. It came at a small price, I smiled, thinking about the 10 minutes of video game fishing it took me. Master Lin suggested dropping the 6 monsters into the lobby display tank to blow incoming guests away the second they walk in. I gave the green light, resolving to keep giant wild fish on strict lockdown for VIP banquets and special occasions. After handing off the fish, I waved Gao Yaoyao over for our next assignment. She jogged over with a bright smile, asking what the boss needed. I told her a film crew was arriving tomorrow for a promo shoot, offering her a 2,000 yuan bonus to dress up and model for the campaign. High-quality promo videos were essential for marketing, and we could not very well print blank admission tickets without a stunning cover model. Gao Yaoyao beamed with excitement, thanking me with a sweet smile for the unexpected bonus. I left the reception hall and took a stroll down the newly laid pebble path toward the Bougainvillea Sea of Flowers. At the entrance stood the new wooden ticket booth, where I locked in admission at 100 yuan to anchor our high-end produce sales. Dense, thorny walls of blooming bougainvillea boxed in all 30 acres, leaving the turnstile booth as the only way in or out. Walking deeper through the gates, the concentric layout unfolded into a radiant wonderland of vibrant color. Very center stood the 3 4-meter quality 3 titans, their massive crowns intertwining behind a lacquered wooden fence. Swarms of butterflies danced through the sunbeams, songbirds warbled from the boughs, and several squirrels peeked curiously from the canopy. I reached out and gently stroked a squirrel sitting on the wooden fence, and the little guy didn't even flinch. I tossed a handful of pine nuts onto the ground, and the squirrels dropped down from the branches to scoop them up. I kept one pine nut hidden in my closed fist, and the clever critters locked their eyes straight onto my knuckles. I opened my hand, and a squirrel snatched the treat before racing up the trunk to stash it away. Gao Yaoyao had been feeding them every day, turning these wild critters into full-time residents of the sanctuary. The next morning, I delivered my morning okra to our T-Mart and rode over to Qin Lin's advertising studio. Qin Lin was a skilled photographer and studio partner, so giving this big production to my childhood buddy was a no-brainer. Walking into the studio, I spotted Qin Lin chatting by the sofa with his fiancée Liao Li and her sharp-eyed cousin Chu Na. Qin Lin! Qin Lin yelled, jumping up from the couch with a broad, infectious grin. I cut straight to business, asking him to check out my new location so we could lock down a contract for promo videos and aerial drone shots. Shooting and editing 30 acres of scenic grounds with drones was serious work, easily worth tens of thousands of yuan on the market. Qin Lin smacked my shoulder in mock outrage, scolding me for talking about money when filming a little fruit shop was nothing between brothers. He turned around and shouted across the office, letting his business partners know he was stepping out to help his brother with a personal favor. "Let us roll," Qin Lin yelled, grabbing his camera strap and assuming we were headed for a 5-minute shoot at Market Street. I kept my mouth shut and smiled, knowing the scale of the resort was about to blow his mind. Watching from the couch, Liao Li looked at Qin Lin with gentle pride, loving how loyal and devoted her fiancé was to his friends. Her cousin Chu Na scoffed, whispering that Qin Lin was a pushover and that I was shamelessly taking advantage of his kindness. Liao Li brushed off her complaints with a calm smile, changing the subject and pulling her cousin out to go shopping. Outside on the curb, Qin Lin hopped onto the back seat of my electric scooter, and we pulled out into morning traffic. After a few minutes, Qin Lin looked around in confusion, asking why we had blown right past Market Street and where the hell we were going. "You will see the second we get there," I laughed, throttling up toward the mountain village.